Call to order this special meeting of the Governing Board of the Cave Creek Unified School District number 93. Today is Monday, August 3rd, 2020. It is 5:02 p.m. Roll call. We have all 5 members of the Governing Board present. Item 1.3, formal adoption of the agenda. I would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to go to move item 2.1 after item 3.5. So we would do after the pledge 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and then 2.1. So that is my motion.
Second.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve as amended. Member Brown,
Aye.
Busby,
Aye.
Hatcher, Member Hatcher, did you vote on the agenda?
Sorry, I was muted. Aye.
Okay. I'm an aye. Member Rich.
Aye.
If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, item 3.1, approval of search agreement between the district and the Arizona School Board Association, presented by myself and Mr. Highland. I have to scroll. You see, the governing board, we're going to review, discuss, and may consider approval of the search agreement between the district and ASBA regarding the search for a new superintendent. We've got exhibits A and B, so we're going to discuss all that. The discussion is going to give their fill in the blanks for timelines that we're going to need to do. If approved, the agreement will be put in final form for me to sign. And the first 5 pages have been approved by the board's attorney. So Mr. Highland, I know you wanted to have some discussion before a motion just because of the nature of the items. So if you'd like to take over, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. It doesn't seem like we've been that far removed since we last had a chance to talk. I hope you find this an exciting opportunity because of obviously the end result is looking for a new superintendent, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. This first agenda item provides for you to have a review of the search agreement itself. As your president mentioned, the document, particularly the first 5 or 6 pages, the boilerplate has all been reviewed by your attorney and approved. But with that, I'd like to point out a couple of things. Please do stop me at any time that you need to for questions. First off, this appointment is simply a matter of allowing us to help you. It does not provide any opportunity for us to be a representative for you. We are not a member of the district, and so we do the work that we are asked to do, and we do that with your blessing and privilege. The term of the agreement has not been established yet because, well, you haven't approved the document, but if you approve the document, then the term of the agreement will begin today. And generally what I put in will be the last day of the fiscal year, which would be June 30th, 2021. That would be as far as it would go. Obviously, our intent would be it would end sooner than that. The district may terminate this agreement. You may terminate it for cause, or you may terminate it for purposes that are not based on cause. Cause would be breaking the agreement in some term, for instance, confidentiality or open meeting law violations on our part, and we can do the same. On the second page, there's a limit of authority. Again, I somewhat addressed that, but we don't have any authority other than to fulfill your needs. Changes to the agreement may occur along the way, and if we agree together that something in the agreement needs to change, we'll write that up and we'll make it part of an amendment to the agreement. Also, ASB is not entitled any workers' comp. I know that's always a potential concern when you have a vendor working for you. We have our own workers' comp there'd be no reason for us to ask to use your workers' comp in this process. The outside services we may use, that was item 13. I want to verify that you understand the only outside service that we plan on using at this point is universal background checks. They would do a final criminal background check and such on finalists for us. And indemnification simply, and we've never had to go to this, but simply means that we're going to hold you harmless and you're going to hold us harmless to the extent that the law permits. We've never had to use indemnification during this process. On page 3, this represents the complete agreement. There's nothing more to it than what you've been presented. The laws and venues that apply here are the state of Arizona, Maricopa County, and ASB may not, nor will we assign any aspect of this to another group. For instance, there are other search agents. We're not going to farm this out. It's going to be our search. Mediation, if something does occur where we come to a disagreement, the terms of the agreement establish that we will mediate. Again, in the last 7 years that I've been involved in this, we've never had a case for mediation. On page 4, confidentiality, there's a number of aspects of confidentiality that will be maintained. One is obviously has to do with open meeting law, has to do with going into executive session. Also, there are trade secrets and there are things that we utilize that are our intellectual property that cannot be passed on. If there's ever any question about that, the district needs to ask me in terms of a particular item or a thought that you'd like to pass on, and I'll tell you if it's our intellectual property, and we maintain confidentiality with it. Conflict of interest, there is a potential for someday in the next 3 years for someone from ASBA or someone from your school district governing board to work for the other party, in which case there is a degree of conflict of interest that occurs, and we would have to have a discussion related to that at the time. Again, that's one of those things that's never occurred. E-verification, we take care of ours and you take care of yours. And if you have any questions about your e-verification, that needs to go to your HR director of what your process is and how you address that process. On the last page of the boilerplate, you've got non-discrimination. Obviously, you are a we're a right to work state. There's no union involved in that, in a right to work state. You also, when you make decisions, you do not discriminate against race, creed, color, religion, sex, national origin, or disabilities. That's a quick review of the first 5 pages. I know you've had this document. Possibly you have questions that you'd like to ask. So I'll stop there for the moment before we continue answer any questions that you might have.
Steve, on page 2 for fiscal agent, other than processing billing, what financial duties would y'all be doing?
That's it, just processing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you would turn to page 6, that's the exhibit, scope of work. This is our boilerplate also. This is what we call a comprehensive search scope of work. There's 16 items. I'm not going to read them all, but I do want to mention a couple of things to you because a couple of things are optional. Item 3 in particular, conduct an online community survey. That's the e-survey we've talked before. We have a chance to talk about that on a future agenda item this evening. But that is certainly something that the board either decides to do or not to do. Item 7 is important, answering inquiries corresponding with applicants. That needs to remain with us. And the reason for that is, as board members in particular, you don't want to get into conversations with potential candidates or potential applicants. That can be seen as an unfair business practice, and it could be seen as somebody receiving information related to the search or related to the board or the board's thoughts or even a particular board member's thoughts that would give them a unfair advantage in a particular situation. Whether it was unfair or not, it could still be challenged. So one of the things that is important is that we become your conduit between the candidates and any applicants and the process. Number 10, conducting community meeting. That again is something we'll talk about in a little bit, but there is an opportunity to do that. Now this, as I mentioned at the last time we met, the community meeting may take a different form depending on where we are with the current health conditions in the state and the nation. So we'll have to judge that as we get to it, but we'll certainly have more conversation about that later this evening. Media inquiries, number 15. Again, we think it's best if the media inquiries come to me. The reason being, again, so you don't get backed into a corner in regards to a comment you've made or something that could be misconstrued by the media or the public. And then projecting confidentiality, I mentioned that earlier. We'll be talking about that as we go through the process. That's our basic scope of work. We represent you. We will lead you through this whole process. But as I mentioned at the first meeting, you will answer the questions. You'll make the decisions. We will do the work. Duties of the Cave Creek provide me with all the information I need to make this successful search. Being present at the meetings is so important. If you miss a meeting and miss out on something that is an aspect of, let's say, the screening process, that catapults into the next meeting, and you're never quite up to speed. So do try. I know there's instances where somebody might not be able to, illness, other issues, but try to be present in each meeting. The protecting the confidentiality in item 4, again, just as important for the board. The referring of communications, item 5 I've mentioned, and then posting the search meetings, that's up to your administrative assistant to ensure that all these meetings are posted appropriately and they're not challenged. And then item 8, determining the extent of the community involvement. Again, mentioned that more than once already. Item 9, work directly with the board's attorney when it comes time to develop a contract and negotiate that contract with the board. Again, item 11, I-9 forms, that's up to your HR department. And then in hearing, this is maybe as important as anything else we have on this document, and that is adhering to all conditions of the agency handbook as prepared by the Office of the Attorney General related to Arizona open meeting law. And I will tell you, because part of my responsibilities is open meeting law when it comes to policy and such, and helping districts with that. I am a real stickler when it comes to that. So that is the scope of work for both parties that has been presented. I'll stand for any questions that you might have.
Joe, any questions on the Exhibit A? Okay, let's go on to Exhibit B.
Exhibit B is the timeline now. This is a fluid document at this point. This agenda item gives you a chance to approve this document, but we're going to need to approve it without the timeline because the timeline is something we'll develop in a later agenda item today, 3.4, I believe it is. But what we'll do is I want to go through this and just kind of explain what the timeline is, how it works. Again, it's fluid because what we decide today may not be what looks good a month from now or a month and a half from now for different reasons. We may have to move something, but we want to make sure that we've got a basic plan. And the basic plan, if you approve the e-survey, about a second header down, we'll have an opening date, we'll have a closing date. We'll want to make that at least 2 to 3 weeks, at least 2 weekends minimum, because we want to give staff an opportunity to, and community an opportunity to fill this out. And then we'll need to report that back. Later on, we need to talk about when that report's going to be, because that information needs to come to the board in an open board meeting. We believe then the report needs to be posted on your website so everybody can see it. If you have a community meeting or any other meetings, we'll need to decide what timing those are when they're going to take place. Planning meetings, well, we're doing that tonight. And the search agreement, we're addressing that tonight. So that last half of that first page are things that we're already in the process of doing. Working with your attorney will be at your determination on the second page, page 9. Community and staff notices. I know that I've already talked to your administrative assistant, Julia, and she already has some things in place. If the board decides to go out with an e-survey and other things, she will be able to communicate with your community. One of the most important aspects of the calendar that we'll talk about later is the date of the search, when it opens and when it closes. Again, it's always good to have this open at least 3 weeks, and 3 weekends is excellent for the process, because the people that are going to be applying already have jobs, and we want to make sure that they have time on weekends to get the process of the application taken care of. It's a very lengthy application. We'll talk about it in another agenda item, but it's not something a person can sit down and do in 30 minutes. It takes quite a bit of work to not only fulfill the obligation of what they need to write on the application, but also all the documents that they need to turn in. Applicant screening. Applicant screening is when you have an opportunity to look at the applicants. So that comes obviously after the search closes. The time difference between the time the search closes and the screening usually is about 10 days. Can be a little longer. It's hard to make it shorter because there's quite a bit of work that I need to do in the meantime, because as I mentioned earlier, we'll have Universal do the background checks for criminal and all searches and such, but I will be doing other background checks on my own, calling references, talking to people, looking these folks up that apply and find out who they are, what they've been doing, where they've been, see if there's anything I need to report back to the board that may be a concern. Once we do that, you'll identify people you want to interview. That comes under the first round of interviews. Something important to remember is when you choose who the first round interviews are going to be with, we do not announce those names. We don't announce those names because 2 reasons. First off, if we put it that early in the process, you will deter some people from applying because they already have jobs in different districts in many instances. And unless they're finalists, they really don't want it to be known that they're out there looking for another job. And the Attorney General has ruled in the past that you only have to provide names to the public once you've determined who the finalists are. And then we have our finalist meeting, and along with that comes the community meeting if you choose to do that. And then the board, and then page 10 obviously has to do their work with the attorney to come up with a contract, to name the superintendent. And then you have a date due somewhere at this point around the first Monday in January. But that's to be determined by contract. And then there is a post-hire training that you can receive from ASBA that you would work with our trainers on. And we just requested that's done within 6 months of the time the person takes their position as the new superintendent. So we don't have, that is a review of the timeline. We actually have another agenda item where we will talk about the timeline, plug in pertinent dates when the board is going to need to have meetings and be available to do the screening, do the interviews, community meetings, and any other activity that you so choose to be appropriate. Do you have any questions about the purpose or the content of the timeline?
I do. In the e-survey, are those questions formatted such that the person can only respond once?
Yeah, I've had that question many times, and I can't tell you that there's a way to get around the system, but people get around systems. We've never seen a case where we have had any concern that somebody has gone in and filled out multiple applications. I'm not going to tell you it's impossible to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about Exhibit B, the timeline? Okay, let's go to Exhibit C.
Exhibit C is simply the compensation schedule, and we reviewed that briefly at the last meeting. It is $9,400 inclusive of all expenses that we incur. The only thing that may be an addition is if you had an additional meeting, and I know there was question about what that means at the last meeting that we had, and I will tell you that if I get a phone call that you'd like me to be involved in a 15-minute conversation on the phone at a board meeting for one purpose or another. That's not a meeting. A meeting is when I physically have to be present, have the type of work I have completed for this evening ready, and have those types of discussions. We're not talking about all of a sudden I'm needed for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. So that is the completion now of the entire agreement. What this agenda item does is gives you as a board an opportunity to discuss it and then approve, if you so choose, the agreement and give authority to your board president to sign the agreement on behalf of the governing board. Madam President.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the governing board approve ASBA search agreement as the board's search agent for a new district superintendent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, Rich.
Who is the motion? I'm sorry, I was looking down.
Hatcher.
Discussion.
I do have a question.
Okay,
Back up in the contract portion, on number 6, it says contractor standards. ASBA represents and warrants that the scope of work shall meet or exceed industry standards and that all work shall be done in the manner of a professional advisor who provides such services. We never had the opportunity to see any other presentations, what other competing type of entities can present. So how are we supposed to be able to say, yes, in fact, work that is being presented to us meets or exceeds industry standards?
that's the guarantee ASBA is giving us.
Well,
we can't
but
discuss,
for
we
us,
can't discuss. We already agreed. We discussed last meeting. We cannot talk about the fact that we didn't have.
well,
can't talk
no,
about
I have a
other-
question about what's in the contract. I'm trying to get an understanding here. This is a contract that I'm being asked to vote on. Now it's saying that ASBA is going to meet or exceed. How are we supposed to know that they're meeting or exceeding? We don't have anything to
Can you
compare it
speak
to.
to what you would expect the industry standards to be?
Well, what do we expect the industry standards to be?
Steve, do you have a comment on industry standards?
I think the industry standards that we would present to you would be in part what you see in the scope of work, that we're going to do things like we're going to maintain the confidentiality. We're going to make sure that we represent you as you present yourselves to us, responding to the questions and directions that you provide us. We're going to ensure that the communication we have that goes out to staff, media, whoever asks those questions, stakeholders I get questions from, that it fairly represents the district. We're going to represent ourselves to the candidates in the same fashion, in a professional manner that does not jeopardize any aspect of what the district stands for or does. We're going to ensure that we fulfill all the obligations of the scope of work in terms of making sure that when we say we're going to advertise, we're going to absolutely do that. We're going to be available. We're going to make sure that those things are done. Any information we provide you, for instance, later on, you're going to be provided with information related to the salary. We're going to, that would be an average of what districts like yours are paying. We're going to do that in a fair and appropriate fashion. We're going to do it based on data. We're not going to just give you numbers. So in brief, that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow your direction. We're going to follow our own scope of work. We're going to follow the guidelines presented in the agreement. And we're going to make sure that we represent ourselves to your community and all applicants in a fair and appropriate professional manner.
I appreciate everything that you've said and thank you. I'm still struggling here with the piece that says you will meet or exceed. How do we know you're exceeding industry standards? All you've told us is this is what your scope of work is. We don't have anything to tell us what the industry standard is.
The industry standards, I think, based on the things that I mentioned, and how would you judge that? You'll judge our work and my work every time we get together. If we're not meeting your standard, and part of that is really where you think we should be as a board, you're going to tell me, and you're going to tell ASB either want to continue with us or as I mentioned last meeting, whether I'm doing the job for you or not. So in part, that's going to be your evaluation of us. There is no quote checklist of things more or greater than what I mentioned, but you'll determine whether we're doing the job.
Thank you.
President Hill, I think maybe I would like to make a motion then to table this agenda item 3.1 at this time.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to table. Member Brown?
There is,
No, you can't discuss. You have to, if we're motioning to table, then we have to take a motion to table and vote on it. You can't
no,
discuss it.
per our policy, there's no vote required for that.
Yes, there is.
I'm looking at our board policy right now.
We have to vote to table it. One person can't table it. We have to vote to table.
Our policy is very specific. Policy BEDD-E.
A vote required is a majority to table it. That's in rules under B118, BEDD-E to table. You don't debate it, you don't amend it, but you do have to require a majority vote.
I don't know what you're looking at, but that's not how, that's not how our policy is
It
written.
absolutely is. Under motion 1, there's a motion and a table. Indefinite or definite, neither are debatable, neither are amendable, but both require a majority vote.
No.
Yes, you cannot have one person table in a minute. You cannot do that.
Roll down to look down where it says table and go across. No
Yep.
debatable, no amendable, no vote required.
Yes, it does. It says majority. I am looking at it right here.
No. You're
No,
not
you're
reading-
incorrect.
You're not reading across the line properly.
Yes, I am. You cannot table a motion without a vote. You cannot do that independently. It has to be voted upon.
All it says is table.
Every time we have tabled anything in this district, even recently, we tabled an item a month or so ago, you have to vote to table the motion, and one person cannot table a motion. It cannot be done.
Are these two different policies you
I'm
guys are
looking at
discussing?
BEDD-E.
BEDD-E
Yep,
on table. If you look, go
I
right.
am
across.
looking, Scott, I have it right here. You cannot table something independently. We have to vote upon it.
No.
Yes,
You're-
we do.
You're reading.
I'm
the-
not incorrect. Mr.
It's-
Highland, have you ever dealt with the table before in any meeting? Can you help me with this?
I don't think
Yeah.
Yeah, he can give an opinion.
he doesn't have the authority at this.
He can give me an opinion. Do you want me to call Dr. Burdick or our lawyer?
If we would table this until.
No,
you
we are not tabling it without a
get
vote.
a reply from our board attorney, that would work.
Okay, I'm calling for the question. I am going to call for the question because what you're doing is inappropriate. I'm calling for the question. Actually, I'm sorry. We need to place this on hold for a minute. Everyone mute and stop their video. I'll be back. Our attorney says that to table an item, we have to take a vote. Are you wanting to take a vote on tabling the item?
Yes.
Okay, we cannot discuss it. The motion that we have to table, and then based on that, we'll move forward. The motion is to table.
And I would also like her opinion in writing, sent to email to all the board members.
Okay. We have to have a motion to table. We have a second to table. A vote aye is to table, a vote no is to not table. Member Brown,
Aye.
Busby,
Aye.
Hatcher,
No,
Hill is a no, Rich.
No.
Okay, we're going to continue our discussion. Do we have anything else to discuss?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Regardless of wherever someone stands on this,
Okay, but
Um,
Janet, it can only be about the item we're talking about. Are you talking about like
I
the
am-
contract and all
you know
that?
what? I have been talked down
Janet, I
to.
am keeping to you because we have to obey open meeting law. Does this have
I
to?
understand that. All I'm asking is for a conduct. I'm making a request for how we conduct ourselves in this meeting.
Okay,
And if that's inappropriate, I'm sorry. But, you know, there is no reason for people to get angry and have attitudes pop toward one another. We're here for the greater good of this school district and to move forward to do a thorough search to find a superintendent. Getting heated tempers and attitudes and getting nasty with other people serves nothing to move us forward. So all I'm asking is that gets put aside and we conduct ourselves in a manner appropriate for the task at hand.
Are you asking a member Brown be sanctioned somehow?
No, I'm just making a comment for all parties involved here.
It would be nice.
okay, then we need to do that moving forward. Do we have any other discussion or questions about item 3.1?
Steve, is this a fairly standard agreement for the search for a superintendent across the industry?
Well, it is, I can't tell you that it's standard across the industry in all forms, but it is pretty standard, yes, and it is definitely standard for us. How we word this, other contractors may give you a little different format, but it won't be substantially different. in
Is this the contract?
terms of content.
Oh, sorry. Is this basically the same contract that you use with other districts
Oh, yeah.
that use your services?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Steve, you had mentioned under scope of work, these items that are all listed, these 16. You somewhat alluded to the fact that these are pick and choose for us, or did I misunderstand that?
Let me turn to that page and explain. When we send this out, and we send basically the same document to everyone, unless I've been pre-advised or something, someone wants that's different. But these are the things we list. This is what we call a comprehensive search. There are times when a district will say, you know, we can do some of this ourselves. We're going to have our HR department do some of this work. If some of this work is determined that it's going to be done by your HR department, then certainly we would, have to reorganize. For instance, advertising the vacancy. If you want to advertise the vacancy and don't want ASBA to do it, we'd take that out and we'd put that under yours. Now, how would that occur? I've never had that one occur, but it would dramatically change what we do and dramatically change your responsibility in this effort. So this more simple example is conducting the e-survey and any other aspect of community involvement. If you don't want to do that, then it comes off our document. And if you do want to do it, then it stays on our document. So that's the pick and choose, so to speak. But I think the key is, a thought by the board. Do you want ASBA doing the full comprehensive search, or do you, as a board and with your current administration, want to take on any of these responsibilities?
So in approving this, we would be approving using you, like doing the survey through you, not creating our own.
I'm sorry, would you do that again? Say that again, please.
I make sure, oh, so like with number, sorry, community survey number 3. That would be, you would be doing the survey for us. That's saying we're gonna have you do it instead of us creating and disseminating our own.
Yeah, that is something we talk about a little later. You've received a copy of the survey as we present it. We would be responsible for putting that online. We would be responsible for getting that link to that survey to the district that you posted on your website. You would have to do the communication with the community that it was there. But then all the information would come in, it'd be put in a report, and that report would then be our responsibility to bring to you to review, so you had an opportunity to see what the community was saying. The 2 other options is we have no responsibility for the community survey. You as a district do it all on your own, or you don't do it at all.
In this scope of work, what exactly is the scope of how the advertising will take place?
The advertising takes place, and we would look at that in a separate agenda item where we will talk about how you want to represent the district under another variety of fashions. Once we put that advertising document together, and that has to do with what we're saying about the district, what we're saying about the community, salary, district position profile, those types of items, then that advertising goes out to, we have about over 60, closer to 80 contacts with universities and colleges around the country. They receive it. The State Department of Ed receives it. All our in-state universities receive it. ASBO, for instance, receives it. So we canvass it pretty wide. Also, other state organizations like ours, they receive the information. I received, I think, 4 search notifications from other states today. And then we post those on our website. We hope that as we put these out, that they do like for us. So it goes out to a variety of different sources. We also, of course, post it on our own website. And we do have a cadre of folks that have shown interest in the past, and we make sure that we touch base with those folks. Also, if I know somebody who has been talking to me about a job, whether they're out of state or in state, and are looking for something that's like your district, size-wise, location-wise, then I make notification of them that the position is open.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as presented. Member Brown?
No.
Member Busby?
Aye.
Hatcher?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Rich?
Aye.
Item 3.2, stakeholder involvement, presented by myself and Mr. Highland, but mostly by Mr. Highland. Let me get to it. Oh gosh.
This is a question that you've asked, and I've alluded to a little bit. What I've done is I have attached our normal e-survey. You can see, if you've had a chance, I hope you have, to look at it, that it has a variety of different questions. They come in a series, for instance, leadership skills, background in terms of business skills and such, academic programs and such. What your community has an opportunity to do, and when I speak of community, I'm talking about the full community, staff, students, board, stakeholders. They have an opportunity to go through and answer these questions and identify things that they feel are important. Under each question, they also have an opportunity to make a comment. Sometimes those comments are very supportive. Understand sometimes those comments are rather critical. Could be critical of the board, could be critical of the district. Any comment that is made that is not appropriate, either poor language or is an attack on someone, I would take out. I would report to the board that that occurred, but I would take that out. Does it happen often? No. I probably had to do that in the last 7 years or so, I probably had to do that maybe 3 or 4 times is all. The last 2 questions I think are important, and we get a lot of feedback here. One question being, what do you consider to be the 2 or 3 most significant strengths of the district? And what do you consider to be the 2 most challenges of the district? So in filling out this document, your community has an opportunity to express their thoughts and converse with you in regards to it. Even though it says, are you a student, are you a parent, are you a staff member? The responses we do not trace back. We do not know where they came from. We just know that X amount of people from the staff filled out the response, X amount of students filled out the response, but it is not identifiable, and you won't have any information related to who said what in regard to their comments. Once we collect all the information is collected, and that is done all electronically, of course, then we receive a report. That report I would forward to the board for review, and then, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to have an agenda item on an open agenda meeting to go over the report. My responsibility there would be to give you an overview from my perspective. Your responsibility would have discussion and comment related to the report. The purpose of doing this is, well, twofold. You get a chance to see what your community's thinking. It's an issue of transparency, and also gives you a means by which to start formulating ideas about questions and the type of person you're looking for. The timing on this should be that this is done and received, and we have had that conversation, or pardon me, you've had that conversation related to the report prior to the screening. Some boards have chosen to do it the same night of the screening. Other boards have chosen to do it a week or so ahead of time so that they have a little bit of mindset. So when they do the screening, they have these things in their mind of what they're looking for that maybe the community has pointed out.
So I guess we should go ahead with the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve the e-survey attached as part of the new district superintendent search. Do I have
So
a motion?
moved.
Second.
May I interrupt for just a moment, please?
Sure.
Okay. That is one aspect of it, the e-survey. The other aspect of it is, I mentioned earlier the fact that you could put together a community forum to introduce finalists to the candidates. I mentioned that that's a normal process, but it may not be possible other than electronically, depending on health conditions and what you feel and your community feels appropriate at the time. So that would also be a portion of this motion if you wanted to have that as a consideration. We wouldn't plan that tonight, but it would be something we would start planning at the screening meeting.
Okay, well, since Mr. Highland said that, Member Hatcher, are you open to amending it to also having the potential of a in-person community forum as part of our approval as a survey?
In addition to the survey.
Yes, in addition, we'd have both. Hopefully an in-person with questions, in addition to the survey.
Who facilitates that?
Madam President, Ms. Hatcher, members of the board, that would be me. The normal process is we schedule for about 2 hours. Let's say you have 3 finalists. We'd want to do it in a formal type setting, auditorium, gymnasium, somewhere where we've got plenty of seating, plenty of microphones. And what we would ask community members to do is when they come in, we have question cards. They can fill out a question card. They come to me, they present I present the questions to the finalists, they respond. Done about an hour worth of question and answer. Then generally, I think it's a good idea to have an open forum type of thing in the lobby or wherever convenient, where the community can mingle with the applicants, talk to them, shake hands, talk about, as they said, talk about things that are on the mind of the community. And then also there's a ticket out the door. The ticket out the door is the opportunity for any community member to then make a statement to you what they're thinking of the candidates that you presented to them. Sometimes it's very direct. Sometimes it's you need to hire that lady that's got the red sweater on or you're making a mistake. Sometimes it's a little more generic, something like, wow, you got 3 good candidates to choose from. Good luck with it. Hope you get the best one. Gives, you know, again, it's transparency. It also, for the community, also gives you as a board an opportunity to see how they present themselves in front of a group. They're on stage. They've got the opportunity to spend time introducing themselves. They've got an opportunity to spend time answering questions. You get to hear how they answered a question. You know, somebody may ask a question related to special needs students and the person's experience in special needs students. You get to hear what they say. You get to hear if they make connections. Also, the purpose of having the mingle time not only is, again, transparency, but as a board, you're there as observers and you get to see how they handle themselves in that type of setting. Are people gravitating to them? Are they speaking easily and openly with the community? And the community will pick up on these things and they'll tell you in their ticket out the door what they believe in terms of not only how they answer the question, but are they a good fit? Are they making a connection with your community?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
You had asked Member Hatcher if she was going to amend the motion, and she asked for clarification, but nothing ever came from that.
So Member Hatcher, are you amenable to amending that?
Yes, yes.
So the motion would be we approve the e-survey as attached as president of district superintendent search, and also pursue an in-person community forum at a later date.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on that?
Couple of questions. How are stakeholders defined?
Stakeholders, our definition is anyone who has an interest in the district. Your community members are stakeholders. The staff, whether they live in the district or not, are stakeholders. You are stakeholders. We use the broad sense that anyone who has an interest. And I think that allows you to canvass the entire district. Again, the real key is that the district gets the word out to the broadest degree of representation of your community they possibly can, so that you get as many people responding as possible.
Now, with whatever advertising or promotion or spreading the word that you're doing, do you have a mechanism to assist us with a way to reach out to people who are in the community but are not, don't have students in the school district?
Our communication director and I have had a conversation about that just recently. And yes, she would help the district with that. Her name is Heidi Vega, and she very interested in working with districts in any fashion that will help promote more interest in this process.
Are the survey results going to be made public?
These survey results are public. Once you receive it, it becomes a public document. Once you present it at the board table, it becomes a public document. That's why we say you should, or at least we recommend that you should publish it on your website so that anyone who can go in and see what the community was thinking.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve as amended. Member Rich?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Member Hatcher?
Aye.
Member Busby?
Aye.
Member Brown?
Aye.
Item 3.3, advertising, presented nominally by myself, but it's presented by Mr. Highland. Sorry, let me scroll. So this is a little different because we're going to discuss before we have a motion, because as you saw below, there are various versions available. So we're going to, in our discussion, as you're looking at the background, discuss approving ASBA to construct and publish an advertising document related to the position. So this is going to be basically, we're going to have a starting place to talk about what we want in our advertisement. So there is some information we'll have to give to ASBA. Basically, Mr. Highland is going to give us examples, and then we're going to discuss what we want our advertisement to look like. Mr. Highland, if you could present.
Thank you. Thank you. We keep the format consistent well when we do these, but the information obviously is not. I took the opportunity to present to you at least some thoughts in regards to the document. And I think what we should do is go through this one section at a time. The first section being Cave Creek Unified School District profile. I went through and looked at things that are on your web. I took a look at things that I thought were important. And I wrote about a page there that I thought represented you. Now, that's just my thought. Your thoughts, obviously, on this are much better than mine. But I thought it was a starting place. I think it'd be good to break it down into these components and talk about the district profile first. Question would be, is this an adequate profile? Does it represent you well? Do you want to change this, add to it, subtract from it, start over on it? That's your discussion to have.
It's not quite, I don't think it's quite accurate at the moment because the numbers have changed on students. And do we want to include Rio Verde as part of the boundaries? We now have 8 schools with the E-school. So there are just some things like that.
If
Well, yeah,
we're,
we
g-
probably
if,
need- what would we call this, an academy of excellence? So it'd be one high school or one E-school, I guess. Yeah, that's probably a more. So we did admit at least that to one high school, one middle school, 5 elementary schools, and one E-school. Is that what you're wanting to add to at least that one sentence, Beth?
Yeah, and I would defer to Ms. Lynch to get the most accurate terminology for that. Maybe it's not E-school, but whatever the district prefers to call themselves.
I'd be happy to get that updated.
Thank you.
if we're going to add Rio Verde to the towns that service the school district, we should add North Scottsdale, Rio Verde. And I believe there's a very small section of what's classified as Phoenix as part
We've
of
got
our,
Phoenix in there, but yeah, we need to add Scottsdale. That's actually a fairly sizable, at least land area.
and we might want to put in that our district covers 175, roughly 175 square miles.
So in order to give them perspective of how big a physical size,
Exactly.
Ms. Busby, did you say 175 or 125?
it's
75.
175. It's huge.
75, thank you.
Yeah, and Scottsdale is a big,
But
size wise, there is a good chunk of Scottsdale.
Steve, will you verify the district size, or are we supposed to do that for you? And the final numbers on college scholarship?
The verification of numbers, you're speaking about the 5,400?
The 5,400, the district size?
Yeah, I will
not a
verify that. I will verify that. $16,300,000 came off your district website. But I also verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Could we possibly, I didn't realize we were going to the next paragraph already, but if we're going to update the scholarship amount, would it be possible to use numbers for 2020 since that's a little more current?
If you have them, yes.
And also when we have a wide variety of rigorous programs ranging from foreign language, there's no mention of EVIT.
Oh, yeah, we need to add that.
And I don't know if it's something that we don't have dual enrollment on there either. Or any mention of special ed.
You mentioned SPED. What was the
Dual enrollment.
dual enrollment?
So
Thank-
EVIT, dual enrollment, and SPED added to that, the programs, is that correct?
Well, those are all programs that are part of who we are.
I know, I'm
And
saying,
I've-
but it was those three.
Yes, yes.
So right now we're looking at adding Scottsdale, Rio Verde to, and then our square mileage. Confirming our student population, adding the 8th school, but the terminology needs to be confirmed by HR. And then adding EVIT, dual enrollment, and special ed. And then also changing the scholarships from class of 2020 to the correct information for, or from 2019 to 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Then I want to add one thing. If you're going to put SPED in there, I think we need to add gifted because it's a form of special education, just a different form.
Gifted instruction.
Yeah.
Madam President,
Hmm.
with those things in mind, does the district work with a specific JTED?
We are with EVIT, East Valley.
You're with East
Yeah.
Valley? Would you like that mentioned?
Yeah, that's, I remember Busby mentioned that. EVIT's what we want to add. We are with them. So it'd be EVIT, dual enrollment, special ed, and gifted instruction added to the programs.
If this is going out on a national basis, is putting the acronym EVIT truly descriptive of what the program is for someone who may possibly be living in Wisconsin that's going to apply for this?
Would you want it like?
You're
spelled
absolutely
Well,
out?
that's a question that I'm asking. Do we need to have it more explained in a different
Defined,
way?
Or at least
But
written
yes,
out?
written
You're
out,
absolutely-
defined.
You're absolutely correct. And when I write this out, I'll make sure that occurs so a different state, someone from a district state knows what that is, because you are correct. Different terminology, different states.
And do we want to mention anything about the arts, since our performing arts is kind of a big deal for us?
And our sports teams that are.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
we're talking about academic stuff right now. So not to cut you off, Jim, on that academic vein, is that something that's worth mentioning?
well, maybe keep it just like, I mean, because we're kind of going from, like, the stuff we listed is like while fine arts is big and some of it's in class, some of it isn't. So maybe we just stick to like the school. You know what I'm saying? Unless you feel like fine arts needs to be in there in the,
Well, I don't know. I'm asking because I know that like the performing arts, theater is a big deal with Cactus Shadows. And to have a superintendent that has a good understanding, a very good cross-section of understanding of a multitude of programs, including, fine arts or performing arts, would always serve to be a good thing.
I would, if
Because-
we're gonna do that, I'd prefer fine arts, because if you do performing, then you might have like the
Oh,
visual
sure. I mean,
art.
I'm something referencing
So
the
fine
arts.
arts. I'm fine with fine arts being. Add fine arts.
Yeah, I would maybe break this up into a couple of different sentences so that it reads,
And so we have one run
Yeah.
along on sentence.
yes, yeah, we would not get good grades in an English class for a run-on sentence.
Well,
And
so,
since we're a school district, we better make sure our English is good.
for the profile, are we good with knowing that we're gonna have everything verified for like scholarship numbers, square mileage, students? How do we feel about the additions we've made to the profile? Are we good with that? I mean,
If
you don't
you
have to vote. I
add-
just kinda need a verbal, like, yeah, I would like that.
If you want to add off of the, off of Dr. Burdick's monthly letter, she had in the June letter, 11,500,000 in college scholarships. And I believe that June
2020?
letter, I
Yes,
believe that June letter was her presentation that was also given at the graduation ceremony. So I would assume that's pretty close.
11.5?
11.5, yeah.
Okay. So what do we think about that as our profile, adding those items? Are we good with that? Is that somewhere we're comfortable?
I'm good
Yeah.
with that, but going back to the English grade we did on this, at the end of 2019, we need a period and not a comma.
There's a couple of typos in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure we're
incidentally,
gonna review this again.
Yeah.
throughout all of these documents, they're dated, they're stale dated. That survey is 2018.
Mhm.
And then as you read through this, the dates aren't current. And I just want assurance that all of this is going to have correct dates, because if we are sending out a survey or an advertisement or something and it has 2018 or 2016 on it, that doesn't serve to put us in a very good light.
Two things regarding that. The documents I sent you, yes, are boilerplate, yes, like for instance, 2019 is mentioned. All of that will be updated. The other thing is, once this is typed out from my part, then it also will be edited by others to make sure like the commas are in the right place and the periods are in the right place. One thing I would like to ask, especially you mentioned, the run-on sentences and such. Some districts have asked me simply to do bullet points, since there's so many items, to bullet point these and make note of it that way, because then it's easier to see, easier to track. Is that something you think would be advantageous for your district, just to have it that way?
That's actually something I was going to suggest. So thank you for reading my mind.
No, I like that because it's easier to read and it shows we have a lot. And then it takes out the run-on sentence. No, I agree. I think the bullet point's a better way to go. You don't lose everything about bullet points.
Now, just backing up for a little bit of clarification, the actual enrollment, we're going to get that number corrected for
I
where
think
it
we're gonna
says
do like an
54.
approximate, like I
Well,
don't think
yeah,
we're
I
gonna go
don't,
down.
I don't expect it to say 52,000.
Yeah, I've got it written
You know,
down. They're gonna
12.
clarify, like if we're closer
Yeah.
to 5,500, it's 5,500, not,
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check that out with your central office.
okay.
Steve, in the first
Yeah.
sentence, I believe it should be Cave Creek Unified School District instead of number 893.
Do I have that incorrect? It's not 93?
Well, I've got 8 on mine.
Wait, what? Where do you have 8?
Where are you?
I'm in the very top sentence.
Oh,
But
I
I
don't
have
know.
93.
I have 93.
I have
Okay,
93.
all right. I printed
Yeah, it's
these
number
documents
93.
off when you first sent them to me, so sorry about that. Thank you.
We're not, it's number 93.
May I direct your attention to the bottom half of this page, governing board vision, governing board beliefs and such. That I took right off the website. Is it absolutely correct?
I can look on the website.
Okay,
You're talking about the vision, yes.
okay. All those statements you believe are correct. And again, we'll run it by the central office to make sure they agree too.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Ed, I've got a lot of information here that I've taken notes on, but I think it's pretty easy. The addition of schools, addition of Scottsdale, Rio Verde, the E-School, will clarify the name, the 175 square miles, will verify the student count, will verify the 2020 current scholarship. As Mr. Brown said, maybe it's more like 11,500,000. We will bullet point all those things like fine arts, performing arts, sports, dual enrollments, SPED, gifted, and the EVA JTED, and we'll make sure it's definitive so people understand that.
Okay. That sounds good to me. How does that sound? Can I see some nods, yes or no, or,
Okie dokie.
okay, let's move on to the next item. Are we looking at the district community, which basically is like our
Yeah, I
selling point?
didn't have as much to work on there as I was hoping, so I made it pretty brief. And I was looking to you for information you thought should be included in that area of district community.
Well, in addition to Cape Creek and Carefree, we need to refer back up to the district profile where we added Rio Verde's, North Scottsdale, Phoenix. But in addition to what is written here, our school district, I believe, reaps a huge benefit from the involvement of the community and the parents. And, you know, when we're looking for a superintendent, we need to have a superintendent who is comfortable working with the community at large and is comfortable with a lot of parent involvement, because there are many school districts out there that have next to no parent involvement. And to bring in a superintendent who comes from a district with low parent participation, it would be somewhat of a culture shock, I would believe, to come into a district where there is a lot of support from parents and community.
Well, could we say something like we encourage and cultivate parent and community support within our school community?
Either that or something to the effect of community and parent involvement or support is, you know, a big part of who we are. It helps define, you know, us. It adds to the scope of what we do in the school district. Something to create the
Let people know
understanding.
they've got to work with parents and community.
Exactly, because we don't want someone to come into this role and not and be blindsided. Not that it's a bad thing, but you know, if we're being honest about who our district is, and I think it's awesome that we have so much participation. But
Well,
we're
but
all
it's a big shock. It's a big shock if someone's coming from a district where they're not expecting parents to contact them.
We're all here, and we're all very much woven into the fabric of this community, and we all know that there's a lot of parent participation. But this is kind of unique to what a lot of school districts experience.
It's easily stated. I can make that a part of the write-up.
Okay.
Are there other aspects of the community that you think need to be mentioned?
No, I'm just kind of curious about something. You mentioned in there it's 90-minute drive to the mountains. Are you referring like Flagstaff?
Yeah.
Wow.
As long as
You must be hauling to get up there in 90 minutes.
As long as it's
not taking any bath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like adding the parent and community involvement. Any other additions to that section? Is that look good to everybody?
You know,
that's easy to do. I'll make that happen.
With where you mentioned local activities, you know, there are a lot of activities here that are desert based, like hiking, for instance, horseback riding. And of course, those are activities that don't appeal to everyone, but there is a certain draw to like hiking, for instance. I don't know how you would put that in, but having a school district situated in the center of the Sonoran Desert puts us in a very unique setting.
Which
And
he's got hiking trails.
Yeah.
in
Well,
there.
I just, where I'm going with this is from an aesthetic point perspective, where we are situated is, we're in a breathtaking area. I mean, we've got these mountains, we have phenomenal sunrises, sunsets, we've got the desert, we have all of that. That's something that we should capitalize on.
Well, do you want
because-
Sonoran Desert mentioned in there? Because that might be something that if you say Sonoran Desert, they kind of, anyone from out of state would.
May not know what it is. It's just something.
No, I'm saying, would
to-
you want to add that? Because when people
I
talk
think
about,
we should, if we're gonna be descriptive of the Cave Creek School District community, this desert is part of our community. And, you know, and it's actually used as a teaching tool for some of the elementary schools. And to bring that in, I think adds to the quality of what we're trying to promote here.
The spirit of the West is still alive here.
Thank you. Thank you. No, we don't have people riding to school on their horse and, you know, hitching up out front, but it is, they could, but we embrace the spirit of the West with a modern day flair.
I like that. I also like your term breathtaking. I'll work that in also.
okay. How's that sound, everybody? Yes, good.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. District operational information, that's stuff that you're going to have to get from, you're going to be getting that from our
CFO.
register CFO. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's
Now,
not,
will we see a final draft before it's sent out, or is this the draft that gets tweaked and we approve the draft with edits and that's that, and then it gets made into a final?
I'm going to, one of our later agenda items has to do with the timeline. And we do have a floating date in there, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it's around the 17th of August, middle August. My suggestion is going to be, because there are a number of changes you want me to make, my suggestion is going to be that at that meeting, this comes back to you in final draft form for either retweaking or approval as written. And then you would send it back to me. Julia would send it back to me with your comments and your changes, and then we would have it published right after that.
Now, the format that you would bring it back to us, is that the final format it would be in, or is this just sort of a Word document and then you have some other format that it would go into once it's, you know, like to be made ready to be sent out for a national search?
Yeah, it would be initially a Word doc from me, and then Katie Link in my office is my assistant. She will actually load it into the electronic format that would be published.
Is there a way that we can actually get a look at what the electronic format would look like?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
can send that up to you.
yeah, I think it would be nice to be able to see a sample of what you're going to produce on our behalf, so we
Yeah.
know what's going out there.
Yeah, I can send that. I can have Katie send that up to Julia. It won't be your district. I can have her send that up in the next couple of days. You can see what the norm looks like.
Now, okay. Okay.
so we're going to give you all of our suggestions and tweaks, and then we'll need to, at a later date, come back and then we'll see the final. And then
Yeah.
that would be uploaded to a digital
That's-
format.
That's what it then would be uploaded to the digital format, right? But I'll send you a like digital format, or I'll have Katie do it ahead of time so that can go out. So you can kind of get a flavor for what it looks like. That's a good question. You can see what the final looks like. After that, we've got, and this is probably the biggest question, and that is the position requirements. Just want to make a couple comments about that before you start your discussion. The one thing you definitely, and I tell all boards the same thing, don't back yourself into a corner. I do think I mentioned at the first meeting, and I'll remind you that if you say that you want a person who's a superintendent's got 10, 15 years experience in a like situation in Arizona in a like size district that has a PhD, has experience as a special ed director, as a principal, as a teacher for 10 years, you're going to back yourself into a corner. You're not going to have that person. I equate this process as a funnel. At the top end of the funnel, you've got a big opening. And although you want to compress it to a definitive point, you don't want to go so far that it narrows the scope to the point where you don't get a lot of applicants. You want to get as many applicants as you can. The process will let you narrow that down. And Ms. Busby, you mentioned it already twice, and I wish I could remember your exact examples. But you said twice along the way here tonight, you'd like to see a principal. Well, one of them was community. You'd like to see a superintendent, not a principal. You'd like to see a superintendent who's going to mingle with the community, get involved in community, be part of the community, and be part of that activist, take an activist role in the community. Weren't your exact words. And that's important. And that's part of that process is as you move through this, you're going to start saying things and thinking about things that you haven't thought about before. Like those two items, you defined those tonight as something you're looking for. Other board members are going to do the same thing. So my point is I would leave the focus a little wide to begin with and let the process narrow down who that last candidate is. But that's just a suggestion. I've got a draft here that gives you an idea what I think it should look like. And it's relatively definitive without being overly definitive. And then I gave you some suggestions in example form on later pages that show you some things that other districts have used and that you could use. So I think it's up to the board now to have that discussion of what do you want the final product to look like.
Now, on this, where you've got the Cave Creek School District profile and then the community profile, you have an area for notes for additional information. Is that for our purposes for this discussion, or is that something that's included in the final document?
Oh, those are the notes I took and you took based on the conversations.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming that since this was put together in a Word document, the final will be formatted differently than what we're seeing.
Well, it will go into, like I say, it'll go into the, Katie will put it in the electronic format.
Okay.
Will it look the same way? Will the
is because-
structure be the same? Yes.
Okay, because you have like district operational information and you have 5 items, and then the 6th one is on a separate page, is on a different page. And so those kinds of formatting things, I'm assuming, are going to be cleaned up. Okay.
Yeah, that'll get cleaned up. And keep in mind, when I speak to your CFO, maybe that's just a kind of a shopping list. There may be other things that your CFO thinks are important to your district that need to be in there. For instance, as it says, the last one, other financial information, bonding capacity, things like that may be important. So we'll leave it up to your CFO to say what's appropriate. And yes, we will. Katie's job is to make it look as nice as she can.
Very good. Thank you.
As we start to discuss the position requirements, you have like the bullet points of requirements, like the degrees and experience. And then if you scroll down, you had, is that different than the examples of position qualifications? Or are we looking at the same thing in two different places?
Well, it's kind of the same thing, only different.
Okay.
And here's what it amounts to. The first paragraph is just, or the first couple paragraphs, is just basically intro. Then position requirements, those are the things that maybe you absolutely have to see.
Okay.
And what I've listed there is you have to see a master's degree or higher. You have to see 5 years successful teaching experience. You have to see a minimum of 3 years experience as a principal and or other public school level administrator. Those are absolutes, the way it's written. Those things have to be in place. If you don't have those things in place, you're not a qualified candidate. Then I put down experience as public school superintendent, but I put preferred. That answers the question that I mentioned earlier. And I put down holds an Arizona superintendent certificate, and I put preferred. But that's just what I put. You can make all of those 5 bullets absolutely required, or you can make them all preferred. I could say position requirements and then put preferred behind that, and they're all preferred. How far do you want to open the funnel is the question. The items then below that are more characteristic of a person, demonstrates excellence, interpersonal skills. You have to judge that when you interview them. You have to judge that from the things they send you in terms of answering questions. You have to judge that how they represent themselves at the community meeting. So those items are more representative of things you're going to glean from an interview and glean from references and things that have been written about these folks. On the next page, must be a leader with passionate vision of education for the future. Well, you can't just, get a document that says that. You have to figure that out as you work. So that's the difference between the two groupings. One is what's absolutely required or preferred, and what are those characteristics you're looking for?
Okay, so in looking at those, if you scroll past, so you go through the salary contract timeline and additional information, what is the difference between the qualifications that we just went over and then we have examples 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5? Is that also variations on what you were talking about? Like example 1 is, requirements, and then we had preferred in a separate set of bullet points. There's another example that has, is that what you're?
Those are just
forms of what we're.
Yeah, those are just other examples of what other districts have done. For instance, if you look at example 1, the district that wanted it presented that fashion, they just wanted it short, sweet, and to the point. They wanted to keep the funnel pretty wide open, so they said that's what they wanted.
Okay.
It's just representations of what different boards have projected in the past.
Okay.
And I wanted you to see what they were because, again, you haven't done this before, so you need to have a variation, I thought, to make a good decision what you want.
Okay.
So our job is to narrow this down right now.
Well, like you did with those first couple items, you need to tell me what you want. If the first representation I gave you is adequate, that's fine. If you would rather take a format like under example 1, where it's a little less definitive, a little more direct, that's fine too. If you like the first representation I gave you, but don't like all the bullet points, want to take some out or add some, up to you.
You're doing, oh, I'm sorry, Beth, go ahead.
I like 5. I would tweak a couple things, but that is the one that I favor the most. I think.
Are you saying example 5? I'm sorry, Beth, is that what you're?
Yes, example 5.
Well, I'm wondering, maybe, do we want to go around the horn and each person like talk about what example they like, and then maybe we're gonna need to come back and just kind of nail down like what we're going to require, because all 5 of us need to be in agreement on the requirement. Like we have to, So do you want to start with, we could start with Beth and then we could reset to alphabetical since you started. Just maybe go through and tell us what, like Beth, for you, what you liked example 5.
Yeah,
Um,
so what I can do is I'll tell you which one I like and which
Okay.
one I absolutely don't like and the reason why.
okay,
My preference is 5. I would eliminate number 3 because it's narrative. I
which
like
one, oh, you mean like 3 within the preferred? The,
example 3. I would
oh,
eliminate,
okay, you like 5, but you don't like example 3, you're not talking about. what the
I
example-
like scenario example 5. I
Okay.
like example 5.
Okay.
I would eliminate example 3.
Mm-hmm.
Example 1 to me is pretty darn short.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I am as
Okay.
an overall picture, but I have more to say when we get into the specifics.
Okay. Member Brown, did you have an example you particularly liked or didn't like? Just to, not for like specifics, but like just the way it's set up?
I was pretty flexible on those. I think if we need to funnel our information into one of those example formats,
Was there a style? I think I'm like, was there a style of an example that you preferred over another?
I think I like number 5. It seemed to work, especially with the bullet points that we have on the pages before,
Okay.
where we list underneath position requirements. And then probably just a comment underneath that position requirements, that 5th bullet point that says hold a current Arizona superintendent certificate, and then it's preferred in parentheses. I think if we're sending this out nationwide, do we want to say, preferred but not required? Because
I think we're gonna get to that in a minute. This is more just like the style that you like, and then I think we're gonna have to each bullet point on what item.
okay,
So as
well,
far as style, you like number 5?
yeah, I like number 5. I think that works good for us.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at style, we're not saying we're gonna go with everything under there, because if you look under number 5, under the Seeks, there may be some stuff. I think we're just looking more right now, we're talking about like style of how it's written. So you like 5.
Yeah, 5 works.
Okay, member Busby?
I
You don't
could
have to
work,
like 5.
no, 5 is good. I prefer something that has bullets for many reasons. But for the person reading this, bullets seem to be a better grasp, or a better way to grasp someone's attention.
Okay.
So all of these are workable. 1 would probably be my least favorite.
Okay. I like 1 because it's short, but I like 5. I think the bullet thing is just, I like that you can look at individual things. I think the only thing style wise, I like the preferred position, or if we have the required and preferred. When we start looking at the part where it says the governing board seeks a superintendent, I don't know if we need that many, like when we start getting to the nuts and bolts. I want some, but not a lot, because I think, if you see that many, you're not gonna, I'd like to narrow it down. But I think 5 works, as long as we have, we're looking for this. These are our preferred requirements, because we don't want to box ourselves in. Or we can tweak it on that, but yeah, 5 works for me. I like shorter and more direct rather than flowy.
Could
But
we create a hybrid from all of these?
I'm
Yes.
sure we could. I think it's more just like what kind of styles we like and we don't like.
It's like you like number 5 if we can get it all on one page.
Yes, please. Well, because and I think all of us know, if we get to the point where you have too many pages of stuff, the important thing gets lost, and then you start getting bogged down into tiny details, and that might actually, where you don't want to have too many requirements that narrow down a person. If we start saying we also want a person who can do this and has a really great golf handicap and also plays the violin, that's just as narrowing as you need to have 3 years here and 2 years here, and so I
Well,
like the idea of 5. I just want to make sure we don't make that so, when you have that many things, it's so broad. I mean, it's nearly superhero. level. So we might have some people go, well, I can't provide you all of that. I'd love to, but I have no golf handicap. And now I don't feel like I can be your superintendent. So I like 5, just maybe not quite so verbose. But I also like short stuff. But I'm easy. I just like kind of, yeah, 1 page would be good. You go past more than 1 page, I think people just aren't. They're going to look at it, but they're going to start not paying as much attention. Remember, Rich, do you have an opinion on style?
Yeah, similar to yours. I like 1 and 5. I prefer brevity, but yeah, number 5, if we could do it on 1 page.
Okay, so we like the style of 5. And I like how in the example it talks about the best fit, because it's not going to be a perfect fit because that doesn't exist. So I like that phrasing. Do we need to start like nailing down with the 5 of us? Do we want to, in 5, it says preferred position requirements. In the one that was initially with ours, if you scroll up to, we have requirements and then we have preferred in parentheses. Do we want to delineate? Do we want everything to just be preferred, or do we have some things that are nuts and bolts? You have to have this is a requirement, and then do with maybe something else, as Scott said, is have something and have it as preferred in a parentheses. Do we want
Yeah,
everything to just be preferred, or do we want to nail down so you absolutely have to have this to be our superintendent?
If we're doing a national search, it's quite possible that there's someone who is otherwise qualified to apply, but they don't have an Arizona superintendent certificate. So what is the process to obtain an Arizona superintendent certificate if you already have that certification in another state?
Generally, there's reciprocity between Arizona and most other states, and it's become actually easier than it was 10 years ago or so, because there isn't as many people looking at this time as there was 10, 12 years ago. So if I'm in Georgia and I've got a superintendent certificate, generally speaking, I can come to Arizona, I can present that, and the state will accommodate me. Now, I said, generally speaking, we don't control it, only the state controls it. The state has the authority to make the determination who qualifies and who doesn't. But generally, reciprocity works. One of the things that often occurs, at least has in the past, is to have an Arizona certificate, you need to have a couple of courses in Arizona history, government, and now they've done that online, so you can just take a test and do a quick, do it that way. So sometimes that person's first certificate shows a deficiency in those areas. So they give it to them for 2 to 4 years or something like that, the intent that they fulfill that obligation. The reason you might want to leave it preferred is that you do open that door that you were talking about. You have a highly qualified person, and maybe you want them to work toward that certificate even if they don't have the reciprocity. But you also don't want to back yourself into the corner of saying, and I had a district recently that we didn't work with that I talked to that had done this. What they put in their document was has a current Arizona certificate or has the ability to get one. Well, what does that mean? It really doesn't mean anything. Yeah, anybody, you know, I shouldn't say anybody, but a lot of folks have the ability, but will they? So you keep it at least so it doesn't back you into a corner. You either want it, you don't want it, or it's kind of preferred.
Could we sort of wordsmith it to the person holds a current superintendent certificate, Arizona is preferred? Because if we're doing a national search, if we make an Arizona superintendent certificate like a must-have, we've delineated it down to that small group. We've eliminated a lot of people, and initially, it's my understanding this process is to make the pool as big as possible so that there's more to pick from. And if we get super specific, we're going to eliminate candidates. You know, John Doe that lives in Bangor, Maine may be, you know, the superstar's superintendent, but he doesn't have an Arizona certificate. So all of a sudden he's not going to apply.
Well, could we say current superintendent certificate required, and then in parentheses, Arizona superintendent certificate preferred?
I believe that's what was asked, and the answer is yes.
Is there, is it appropriate to say, you know, preferred, or the expectation that the certificate is obtained in whatever the period of time is that I see, I don't know what the nitty gritty is of the process. So I'm sort of fumbling with this question because I don't know the process.
It's an excellent question, and it's what I mentioned earlier. What this district that I was talking about that we didn't work with, but I found out later what they'd done, and I happen to know one of the board members, and I said, you know the problem you got yourself into. And what they did is they said, you know, has Arizona certificate either in place or has the ability to get one. Well, okay, so I asked this board member, I said, okay, so how long did you give them to get it? Well, we didn't define it. Well, who's checking to make sure they do get it? Well, we didn't define that either. I said, so what if they don't get it, then what are you going to do? And she just kind of looked at me and said, I don't know. And I said, that's why we would never, ASB would never recommend that. You either say they have to have it, or you say it's preferred, and then it works itself out, because you want the best candidate you can get. And you don't want to lose the best candidate, just as you said, because you said has to have that Arizona certificate in place right now. If that's what you want, that's fine. But they may also not be your best candidate. You may have that person, like you mentioned, from North Dakota or wherever, that really is your best candidate, but they don't have a certificate. So your point is well taken. And I think the key there, recommendation wise, would be settle on either preferred or don't say anything at all about it.
Well,
Or you say they want Arizona, and then, you know.
in the one you suggested, like the one you wrote, if you go up from all the examples, under the first prior position requirements, the one that you had where it did say hold a current Arizona superintendent certificate preferred. That sounds like, so basically we're saying it's not required, but we prefer it. You're saying that's probably the safest bet to do with something like that, so we don't box ourselves into a.
It gives you, as the board, the most room to work once you look at your applicants.
So if someone from North Dakota is great, that's not taking them out of the running, but we are saying we would like for you to have it.
Right.
Without being.
So it's better to say Arizona preferred as opposed to hold a current superintendent certificate, Arizona preferred.
Either direction is fine. Either way is fine. You're not closing the door too tight in either way.
Okay, my vote would be to just say hold a superintendent certificate, with the understanding this is going to be a national search.
Mhm.
And for a potential candidate to see it written out, Arizona superintendent certificate preferred, that could immediately make someone feel like they would not qualify. Why should I go through the time to fill out this application? So if it just says superintendent certificate in parentheses, Arizona preferred, that I sort of feel like is a little bit broader definition of the exact same thing that we're looking at.
Can we say that they need to hold a superintendent certificate, but they're eligible for?
I think that's what he just said. We don't, sorry, Beth, we don't want to get into the whole eligibility thing. Like just say you need to be a superintendent, and in parentheses, we prefer Arizona.
Well, by eligibility, I mean they've got the qualifications to go for an Arizona certification.
The problem with that is I cannot tell you that they do, and you cannot tell me that they do, Only the State Department does. So you put yourself in a position of saying, okay, we think you will go forth and get your certificate, and for some reason the state says no.
Mm.
Well,
Is it likely to happen? No. Could it? Don't put yourself in that position to test it.
But that's also something when you do the employment contract that we can have written in, that if we need to put a time frame, if they're coming from out of state, that they need to have a valid superintendent certificate issued by the state of Arizona.
Absolutely. And then you give them a time frame.
And then you give them a time frame, and then write that into the employment contract, and then you've got a deadline that has to be met.
Well,
That's absolutely appropriate.
by the time someone shows up as a candidate, as one of the finalists, one of, say, 3 people that are being interviewed for the position, by the time the candidate gets to that stage of the process, would we have communicated to out of state superintendent that in the event that you are hired, you would be required to get this certification within X amount of time?
I always tell those folks that unless I have other instruction from the board, people from out of state will call me and I say, what's the first thing I need to do? I say, well, but even before you apply for a position, apply for your certification. Get that in place.
See, that's where I was going with this, is the person from out of state who is proactive and does their homework ahead of time already knows that they need to get the certification. And, I'm interested in that person who's already done their homework and knows what needs to be done. I don't think having to spoon feed, oh, by the way, person, you need to go do this. They should already, if they're that interested, they should be taking the appropriate steps.
So they should know if they want to be a superintendent here, they've got to.
Mhm.
Well,
I
so what
assume-
would the phrasing be that we want that is opening it up to out of state, but reminding them?
Is there a cost
enough.
involved in transferring a superintendent certificate?
Oh yeah, the state charges. I can't remember. I don't recall what it is cost-wise, but when you
I
do
mean-
the certificate, it's relatively minimal. It's not
Okay, it's not like $5, but it's not like 5,000.
exactly.
Okay, all right.
It's closer to 5 than it is 5,000.
Okay,
But I
okay.
don't know the exact number.
Well, so,
Charge you for each certificate. So if you go
Gotcha.
and say, well, I want my superintendent, principal, and teacher, it's like $40. Don't quote me on $40, but that's how they do it.
Sure. No, I understand.
knowing where we're trying to go with this, do you have a phrasing that doesn't sound clunky or boxes us into a corner that meets what we're saying we
Yeah.
want?
Yeah, let me, can I back up a second though?
Sure.
We focused on that one thing. I'm hearing that example 5 is kind of where you're headed,
Mhm.
thing like that, right? Okay. And I've also heard you want to keep it short, but not too short. Keep it to a page. Okay. So my suggestion would be, if we look at the first paragraph, we do keep it simple. The Cape Unified School District Governing Board seeks a exceptional leader with high standards, personal integrity, and good moral character, period. The governing board understands that the candidates, and don't fill in anymore, because if you fill in more, you make it longer. The governing board understands the candidate will likely possess, and that's fine.
Mhm.
And where it says preferred, let's start right there with that word,
Okay.
5 points. I think a master's degree is absolute. They're not going to get a certificate without one anyway.
Oh, yeah. Does anyone, or do any of the 5 of us disagree with that at all? I mean, I think that's a no-brainer, but that's Scott's shaking no, Janet's.
I,
Does anyone have a problem with the masters or higher?
oh,
I think some of these things need to be not in the preferred category, but in the requirements, just
And
flat
that-
out requirements, and that would be one of them.
That's kind of where I'm taking you on this. So
Oh,
it looks more like the first example, but so master's degree is an absolute. 3 years successful teaching experience. That's very important to your teaching staff that they know this person's been a teacher.
We have
Minimum,
everyone,
3 years.
wait, let me see head nods. I'm seeing Scott nod. Are we good with the
Yeah.
minimum of 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the same thing is true, minimum of 3 years successful experiences. Your principals like to see that. Now, if we take the word preferred off position requirements as a header, like we did in the first example, and leave those as absolutes, those are 3 things they have to have. So when you do your screening, those are 3 things you're looking for. Actually, I'll tell you ahead of time, candidate A meets the basic requirements, candidate B doesn't. I'll tell you. And then the next 2 experiences, a superintendent, district level administrator, public school, and holds an Arizona certificate at the time application. Would you like to put the first 3 as absolute and the last 2 as preferred, and change the last one to holds a superintendent certificate, Arizona certificate preferred, and I would work on the language so it made sense. Does that work for you to do it that way?
I would prefer that language, you know,
Yes.
preferred Arizona.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like the first 3 being required, the second 2 preferred, and then we tweak, like you just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
on here where it says preferred position requirements, these are kind of givens. These are the non-negotiable requirements. Am I understanding this correct?
The
Yes,
first
and
3
if you go with what was just
Well-
said, the first 3 would be non-negotiable.
Okay, well, if they're non-negotiable, we can't call them preferred. We've got to
Oh,
just
no, that
say,
word comes off.
okay, okay.
Yeah, it says, but now it says position requirements.
Okay.
The first 3 are the position requirements absolute. The next 2 are preferred position requirements.
Okay.
Well, we're not going to make it a requirement that the person has had superintendent experience.
That's
Well,
up to you.
I mean, you might have someone that hasn't been, a lot of people coming into superintendent. I mean, do we want to take out the possibility that we have someone that's been an assistant superintendent but never been a superintendent?
Yeah, I
Well-
wouldn't want to lock that in,
Okay.
that it's a superintendent.
I
So
mean,
you
if we
guys-
leave
well-
it as preferred, that's one thing, maybe like if we
Preferred,
come down
yeah.
to 2 people and they are really, really equal, but one has been a superintendent and one hasn't, that could be something like, okay, that's our tipping point, that you're totally equal people, but you do have this experience, you have this one extra nugget of experience that isn't required, but we prefer it and you have it. Do you see
Right.
where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just put the word preferred in parentheses after that, where, like we had in the pages before.
Easily done.
What do y'all think about, though, the district level administrator? Do we want to leave that as preferred or required? Because otherwise a principal can jump to a superintendent's position.
I'm fine with preferred. I mean, we've seen principals jump to superintendents. I mean, I would rather keep a preferred than required. But I mean, that's also something where, you know, I'd like to have the option that if we have a person that came in that hasn't been the superintendent or district level, but is this amazing principal that has certification and we're like, my gosh, they can take us somewhere new. I'd like to have that option. But, you know, I'd like to see someone with district experience, but I don't want to require that. Are you saying take it out altogether? I mean, I'd
No,
like
no,
to see
no.
it, but I also,
I'm not saying take it out at all. I'm saying, I'm suggesting that it be required, that they've been a district level administrator.
I think that
I'll
might take
defer to
out
the
more
group.
people than. I'm concerned that could take out some.
Because
I
that could eliminate your assistant superintendents. Because if you
No,
keep
that
that in there, then that opens that all up.
That would include the assistant superintendents, because that's a district level administrator. So that would actually include
Right, but
assistant.
somebody just said that they wanted to take that out. I said, I
No,
don't think,
No, I don't want to require it. I just want to keep it as a preferred,
yes,
but that's
preferred.
just my vote. I mean, we need to come to an agreement on Beth's wanting to make it required. I'm not. So the 5 of us need to decide, or at least come to a vote on if we're making that required or preferred.
I like that as preferred.
Okay, Beth, you like it as required?
I'll defer to the group on that, because it's what you just said a minute ago, Catherine. When we get down to the looking at the applications, that could be a tipping point also.
Because I mean, I think you never know. I mean, it could not be. We could have someone walk in that is a past superintendent that's done it for 10 years. And you're like, wow, you meet everything. But you never know if you're going to get, I don't want us to be the districts like, you can't come to us unless you've been, because there are school districts that won't even look at people if they've never been higher level. And that's keeping out some really great, younger, innovative leaders that are principals, and they're, you know, giving a chance. I mean, that may not be the direction we go, but I'd like to have that opportunity. If someone comes in and blows us away, having not been a district administrator, but has all the necessary tools, has all the requirements, but can handle that, I'd like to keep that open as, you know, we keep that person in mind. Just,
I'm good with deferring to what everybody thinks.
okay. Jim, do you have an opinion on that?
Keep the funnel wide.
Janet?
They make it as broad as possible, so put it as preferred.
So keep those last two preferred. And then tweak, like we said about the certificate.
Yes.
On that certificate point, is it just easy to say hold or able to attain an Arizona superintendent certificate?
Mr. Brown, the reason you don't want to say able to is because that isn't anything you can really stand behind, because how are you going to judge that?
Yeah, because then I think that's when it gets into that whole thing about you getting into contract negotiations, and then it gets lawyery.
Are there certain
you can narrow that
qualifications that are required for a I'm assuming there's certain qualifications that are required to get a superintendent certificate.
There are certain requirements for a superintendent certificate, absolutely. But
are they uniform from state to state?
No, they're not. Every state's a little different. That's why sometimes when a person comes in with a certificate, they'll give them a temporary that's good for a couple of years. They're getting away from that more and more because we need to get more superintendent certified folks in here. I think just as a focus point, I think you're having a great discussion. You're doing a very good job of discussing this, but I think that what you've come up with is probably a nice settling point. And that is the first three are absolute, the next two are preferred, with the caveat that the current superintendent certificate and then Arizona preferred means something too. It's kind of like Ms. Busby said, person went out of their way to get a certificate in the state they were at. They showed that they had the inclination and the will and the energy to do it. That proves a point to begin with. Now, when you, like Brown said, once you get into the negotiations, part of this is you've got 2 years. We want you to have that certificate within 2 years in place. That as an example. I think that's fine.
Okay. Are we
I
good
think
with
that's
that?
a
Are we in
good
agreement
place
on
to be.
those? Okay.
Yes.
I think it's very, yeah, it's to the point, but gives us, okay, on the
Yeah.
next part, do we want, that's where that's an awful lot of stuff. Is
What
there
I'm going to
something-
do is lead you through a little exercise, and it's going to be, what I'm going to call it is, what don't you want? Okay?
Oh, yikes.
Because what you do want is you want it concise enough to fit on one page. And
Yeah.
you got about 15 bullet points. So I'm going to go down through it and ask you to kind of talk through each one of these and tell me what you don't want. Don't tell me what you do want. Just tell me what you don't. First one is has experience working with the diverse population, multicultural, multi-language, second language learning environment. Does that fit your district? I will tell you the district that used this particular information was a reservation district. So they did that on purpose. Do you need that?
We
I
don't
mean,
need
that's
it.
No.
pretty, but it doesn't apply to us, to be perfectly.
No.
we are
Our
not multi anything.
our diversity numbers are very, very low,
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's,
like extremely.
yeah, like 9-10% maybe. So yeah, I think that's not, it's great, but it's not something that's going to be,
And that
We
would be
can
a
check
deal
that.
breaker.
Delete.
yeah.
How about-
Are you
how about
guys
bullet-
some nods on that? Is everyone okay with not number one?
Yeah. Bullet 2 then, student-centered programs committed to growth every child. Important?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
that's what it's all about.
Well, I think that also goes, we talk about programs and activities. that covers what we talked about up earlier, because we are a district that has lots of sports, lots of fine arts, lots of culture. We need a superintendent that's going to encourage that in our kids, because that's what we expect. That's what our community is. We want someone that wants to push our kids to grow in many different ways. So I like number 2.
The third bullet is kind of like the second bullet, restated in a different way about being student-centered and academic success. Is bullet 3 necessary?
No.
I mean, I would hope it would be understood they want the kids to do well.
Well, this person is an educator,
Mhm.
is currently a superintendent or an educator to whatever capacity. If they're applying for a job for a superintendent, there is some amount of assumption you've got to make that this person does have a commitment to furthering the education and building up the student.
Mhm.
And so to restate that is, well, it's somewhat redundant to the second one. And to restate it again, I mean, to me, that should be a given. I shouldn't have to ask the person that's applying, is this who you are? That skill should already be there. It should be the innate skill. And if they're not a student-centered person, that's something that comes out in an interview.
Yeah, well, and I think if they do any digging on our district, they'll see the expectations for academic success are, I mean, they're already
Yes.
there. So we don't want someone, yeah, I think it's kind of redundant.
No, I would take out number 3.
Do we agree
the
on
third-
taking that? Can I see some
the-
nods?
The
If you
fourth,
think, or, yeah, I don't want to push. I mean, Janet and I are yelling. So if the other 3 of you, if you're like, no, you have to keep it, just,
I hope you're not really serious that I'm yelling.
no, I'm
because
saying we're popping in going, we like this, we like it. I'm just like, do I have head nods? So, okay, so we're ditching 3.
the fourth bullet is having to do with curriculum planning and instruction.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah.
Well, I
They
think
need to
we're
have
seeing right
experience.
now, yeah. We need someone that's been around with some of this.
Yeah, that's a
How about,
definite.
could we wordsmith this a little bit, and maybe where it says dedicated to the implementation of programs, maybe we could make that demonstrated success with implementing programs or enhancing student learning.
Mhm. Demonstrated success in the implementation of programs. How's that?
Ooh,
Perfect.
yeah,
I can make that work.
and that makes it shorter. So
Mhm.
that goes with my shorter bullet points.
But are you going to include the curriculum planning and instruction piece? That's not coming out right.
Oh, I assumed that was going to stay there, and
Yeah.
then after the comma, demonstrated experience
Yeah,
or success, whatever it was that I said.
Demonstrated is a better word. And it also leads you to a question that you can ask at an interview.
Mhm.
How have you demonstrated?
Oh, yeah, your experience. Scott and Jim, how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, that's good.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Number 5.
Yeah, the knowledge of current Arizona state standards, state assessment protocol, and core standards.
Well, isn't that gonna hurt us with any out of state?
Exactly. If
Yeah.
we're doing an out-of-state search, this is a question that's going to eliminate
Yeah.
a candidate.
Well, and let's be honest, man, our assessment protocol in the state changes every year. So,
well, there's no way one person is going to know 12 years of standards.
yeah.
That's just impossible. They should have a general overview of maybe what standards are. You would think they would know that, but this is impossible for one single person to even know this.
That's all.
But by the time someone comes to a final interview or is in the pool of a final candidate, one would hope that that candidate would have done their homework and
Mhm.
sort of investigated just exactly what standards are in Arizona. Because during an interview, that would make for a very interesting conversation.
Mhm.
Oh, you're from Florida. So tell me, what are the standards for your 4th grade math or whatever it is? And then from that, you can get an idea of where innovation and creativity are coming from, because that standard in another state is probably not exactly like ours.
Yeah, I'm fine with, I think that's off. Yeah, that's a very specific, I mean, that's almost like a requirement. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Done.
I
You're,
like-
you're gonna
We
find
also
out in
have-
your questions real
Yeah.
quick if they
Scott,
know
how do you feel about ditching
they've done
that?
their homework.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
that's a cut, because like Member Hatcher said, that's impossible for anybody to know. And we don't even know it, and we're in Arizona. I mean, it changes so quickly that who knows?
Jim, you
It's like-
okay with ditching that? Okay.
I rarely take exception with a board member for good reason. But I will tell you, Beth, it is possible, and I live with one I have for 46 years, so she can tell you
Would she like to be our
standard in any
CRC?
grade you want to know.
That is very impressive.
But I
Okay,
tell you what,
so the
it's a
next one.
I never argue with her on standards. Models high expectations, holds others accountable for the same standard of accountability, honesty, and integrity.
I think that's important. It goes to, yeah. It
Yeah,
goes
that's-
to character.
It's important, but look at this from another perspective. This is not a quantifiable type of thing that we're putting on here, okay? So your definition of integrity, accessibility, etc., may be different from the candidates, okay? This is, there are other ways to ask, like as we go through here, there's other things in this list that speak to some of these things. And the only reason I'm bringing up a different perspective on this is try to whittle down the list a little bit so that it fits on one list. It is very important, but it works into some other areas on this list. I'm just saying, I'm good in or out.
I like it because this person is the leader of the entire district. And to me, my saying is the tree shakes from the top. And, you know, for a teacher, the principal's character and characteristics tends to be how the rest of the staff follows. So to me, the same thing is, and many of these things aren't quantifiable. Curriculum planning and so forth isn't necessarily quantifiable. So I actually like that one, and I would prefer to leave it in.
Is there a way to take this one about high expectations, the next one, sensitivity for diverse views, and then the one below that, that's management style that deals with complex problems? Is there a way to sort of massage all of that
Make it one.
to make it one?
I
can do
think
that.
those are three different things to me. They're three discrete descriptors. One has to do with one's character kind of thing, how they are as a role model. The second one, it is what it is. They're very discrete.
For management style, what are like the non-negotiables for a management style?
Well, I mean, could we say though that, I mean, well, like, I feel like the model's high expectations, while the others are discrete, it does cover the other stuff, because then you go after that, like high expectations is this very broad, I mean, accountability is a broad topic, honesty, not, but you know. But then we start getting into like certain management styles and things like that. I feel like we're almost it's getting too technical again.
We
Well,
have
some of these
expectations.
are,
They're-
some of them are
we
broad.
expect them to lead by example.
Yeah.
They're going to set the example.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Janet?
I think we leave those three in because that also gives us some questions that we can ask during the interview process.
Oh, like
Especially
what's your management style?
on the first one, the involvement and commitment to school and community. that we could ask the candidates to give us some specific examples. And then I think after those questions come out, I think we'll begin to see what kind of a management style they have. But then if we can also follow up with that, with an open-ended question of, tell us how your management style solved XYZ. And then that gives us a chance to discuss a little bit with the candidate.
Like a question like, how do you define accessibility, involvement, and commitment to a school and community?
Yeah.
Like that kind of question, like push it back on them, though, this is what we want. How do you define what we're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
I know that number 3, I think number 3 was the one that was not a fan favorite. Am I correct?
Number 3, what?
Was the example number 3.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Did you find something though?
Well, yeah, one of the statements that's on here, a visionary leader who seeks and transforms ideas into reality, celebrates innovation, focuses on success, accepts risk, and builds a culture of growth and problem solving through continuous improvement. I like that because innovation is really important when it comes to education. And this statement encompasses a lot of things that are very relevant to our classrooms, our district. And especially right now, given the environment that all schools are in, being able to be a visionary to see beyond where COVID-19 has placed us and to have a plan to take us to whatever the next level is important.
So would you
want
add
that in the place of some of these?
I would take that statement and put it in, the high expectations, someone who is in a superintendent's position, I already expect them to have high expectations. Otherwise, how did they get to that job? You can't achieve the role of the top person in a school district with low expectations. And
In that bullet point, though, that includes a lot of other things.
it does. And what I'm saying is we can wordsmith some of this. I look at this as sort of a starting ground, and how can we massage these ideas into what is really who we are as a district. Just because it's here on this sheet of paper, I'm not taking that as, well, since it's on example number 5, we have to go with that one. That's a suggestion. And how do we take that and make it our own?
Well, if you take that thing from number 3, that encompasses like the very last one of the one we're looking at, the leader with the passionate vision.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is in 3 along with some other stuff. So it could be something that we take that and we could kind of knock out some of these others, like, working with people and things like that falls into that broader point under example 3 that covers several of the bullet points that we're looking at right now.
I mean, just so I'm not getting off into the weeds here, for these attributes, are we looking for broad or very specific?
I'd like broad. I mean, because I think Scott's right. You give them broad and then you're able to go in and question, okay, this is what we gave you. What do you see as, I'd like to know, like when we talk about diverse views and opinions, how does a superintendent, what do they think diverse views and opinions are? Because it could be different. Like they go, this is what I think a diverse view is. And I'm like, wow, that's
well,
1%.
Depending on where an individual comes from is
Right.
going to dictate what they see as diverse, because diverse in Cave Creek is probably going to be a lot different than diverse in LA.
So I think maybe if we make it broader, then we open it up. If we get less specific, like some of these are very, very specific further down. And it's a broader topic, it gives us more of a conversation in the interview rather than just like, do you know this accounting procedure or something like that?
So, like Beth, from your perspective, what are like 3 really important attributes that we really need to go after, that we really need to make sure that this person has?
Student-centered is one, communication, ability to communicate is the second one, and experience in not only educational activities, but also the peripheral activities of budget and finance. Those are the 4 biggies in my mind.
Okay.
Okay, see, that's much more succinct than some of these. I mean, I like that better than the has experience and knowledge in school law, finance, fiscal planning, federal programs, grant writing. I mean, crimey.
A lot, because see, a lot of the stuff that's in there, the stuff that would come out in an interview, like the grant writing, for instance,
Mhm.
that's something that more than likely will come out in an interview.
Yeah,
And
they've written
so-
their experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And so some of this stuff, and there's a lot of things on this list that are extremely important, but we're going to make this list so big that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Hmm.
And, eventually we're going to get somewhere between 5 and 1 on here, and we're going to have like 1.375 or something.
Right now, we've only agreed upon 2 though, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. Well, we've dumped 3. So, I mean,
so we have 2 that we've agreed on, and if we add those 4, somehow we craft statements revolving around the 4
mhm.
skills that a superintendent should have, we would be up to 6.
Well,
So
'cause
that-
How many bullet points do we want to have in this category? 5,
well,
6,
for like, I
10?
mean, definitely not more than 10. I mean, 5 to
I would say 5 or 6 would
5
be
or
my.
6. Because like I like what Steve said, and the one that really sticks out to me that is something that but then also we cover it somewhere else, like the willingness to become an active and contributing member of the district and community. We've emphasized that multiple places.
We don't need to.
I don't think we need to. So maybe the 4 that Steve gave us covers those items, and that knocks us down to like 6. And so there are bullet points that are descriptive, but we're not just like, and we'd like this, and we'd like you to do this, and we'd like you to be able to do this on the weekend. And I mean, I like we're seeking someone, but I'd like it to be succinct, because it is going to be, if we're getting into the weeds, just even discussing this, the person looking at it
Well, that's my
is going to do
point.
the same thing.
That's my point. And so
Their eyes are going to glaze over. They're going to be like, I can't possibly meet all your expectations.
it's almost like I would do a round robin and everybody give 2 or 3 attributes that's really important, and out of all of that there's going to be some duplication, and then
Yeah,
from
number
there
5 is it clearly has too many.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Steve,
so-
what were those 4 that you gave us that we hadn't really, like you said something about finance, however you articulated finance, I really liked, because it was pretty, you need to know it, but it was pretty to the point. What did you say about that?
I said, you asked me for what are the primary areas, and I said student-centered was one.
Mm-hmm.
I said communication was another, good communicator. Experience in the educational realm is another one, curriculum and instruction, and then budget and finance. To me, those are the four biggies. All of the others in some way, shape, or fashion can almost fit under those 4, depending on how you word it. And it's been mentioned by more than one of you that when you get into the question and answer process, you're going to very quickly glean what they know, what they don't know. So if you wanted me to take and scrap all of these basically, and write 4 that were specific to that, those items I mentioned, I can easily do that. Plus, if I went back to example 3, item 2, visionary leader who seeks to transform ideas and reality and celebrates innovation. I started with that. That's kind of the broad scheme,
Mhm.
And then came up with those other four: student-centered, communication, budget, and finance, and education. If I put those four, you'd have 5 bullet points that were pretty solid.
Well, I like that because you'd have the broad over topic, and then like even because the two we've agreed on are actually two of the ones you mentioned. We agreed on student centered and we agreed on curriculum. And I mean, I know we're going to agree on finance because that's a necessity. So I like the idea of doing that broader from number 3 and then doing the 4 underneath, because those are, I mean, we need communication, finance, curriculum, and student centered. I think that's 5. And if you're someone looking at that, that's kind of a, like visually 5 bullet points is just kind of a nice,
And keep
I don't
in,
know what the word I'm trying to use
if
is.
you're going to look at this on the 17th, I think it is, you can always at that time look at it and go, sounded good, but let's add one more.
Okay.
You can always make
Yes.
some adjustments when you approve what we're going to put out.
How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah,
Going with that broader thing from number 3 and then having Steve kind of massage those other 4 that we've already kind of mentioned some. What do
And
you
then
think of
he
that?
would bring back
Oh yeah, we'd look at that again.
a draft. Okay.
Well, I think what we do is, when we get to it is we would approve this item as a first draft, knowing that it's going to come back as a second. Approve a first draft, having a final reading later. So we would approve this as a draft, as a first
If
reading.
it's
like we
going
do
to
with
come
other
back
stuff.
with modifications to it, then I'm a little confused why we're approving something if it's coming back changed and not just put it back on the agenda.
Well, because we got to approve DC even do the changes.
Let me chime in if I may. What we've done is you've done an excellent job of discussing this. I mean, it was really good to hear all the things, and you all stayed very focused. And I think you've come up with some good things. I think the motion can be to direct ASBA to take the input from the board, draft this and send it back to you for consideration. I think that's
Okay.
what they want me to do.
Okay.
I can make a motion to do that. Exactly what you said.
Okay.
You can say so moved if you'd like.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Are we good with that? Do we want to do that as our vote, as the redraft it? Okay. So the motion is what Steve suggested, that Janet moved and Jim seconded. Sorry.
So Steve's going to take it and redraft it and come back with some new modifications.
Okay, so that's what we have. Member Brown,
Aye.
Busby,
Aye.
Hatcher,
I,
I'm an aye, Rich.
Aye.
Okay, item 3.4, district-specific questions for the application, presented by Mr. Cullen.
Catherine, before we go on, could
Do
we
you need a
take like
break?
a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we've been on here for 2 minutes, so it's 7:20. Let's make sure you guys mute and kick off your video, and then come back by 7:25.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're just talking Janet, and then we'll start up again. Oh, okay.
Catherine, before you get started,
Hmm.
we kind of skipped the last page of that document when we went to position requirements,
Mm-hmm.
and then went to the examples to work it out. There's still another page there that's got salary, timeline, and additional information.
Oh, you're right. Okay, guys. So Janet, are we okay? You're right, Scott. We didn't cover that whole thing. Are we okay with going back, knowing that with that other stuff we talked about, Mr. Highland is gonna tweak it and come back, but we do need to go through that other stuff. Are we okay with revisiting that? You're right. We skipped that whole part. Are we okay with
I'm
going
good.
back to that?
I'm good.
Beth?
Yep.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. Mr. Highland, can we go back to, yeah, because we skipped through whatever we're seeking. And then we need to actually go back to the page where it's like salary contact timeline. I think the additional info is kind of, but we need to talk about the salary contact and timeline. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, what I was saying is that you didn't approve the document, you just approved me to go back. So now clarification wise, I can go back to it now that we've gone to recess. And I'll just say under salary and contract, the salary that I put down is 155 to 175. Where did I get those numbers? Every year we do a salary survey, and that salary survey goes out to all the districts, and we usually get a good representation back. I'm looking at the document right now in terms of Maricopa County, and we do this by size of districts. In Maricopa County, with a district your size, you're right on the borderline here because we do 2,500 to 5,000, and then we do 5,000 to 7,500 students. If we look at 2,500 to 5,000, the low point is 130. And the high point is 150. If we look at 5,000 to 7,000, the low point is 150 and the high point is 180. So you're kind of in the middle of that because you are higher than 5,000, but not that much, which are smaller than the 7,500. So I took those and I weighed those numbers and I looked at the averages. And in Maricopa County, the average for a district between 5,000 and 7,500 is $150,000. That was last year now, 2020. We'll be doing the 2021 here in a couple months. And then the 2,500 to 5,000 was 135 to 150 with a midpoint of 130. I don't know what your current superintendent makes. That's a factor also. Catherine, do you know what your superintendent makes?
Yes. With the increase from the 2% for the fiscal year 21, because we did a 2% raise for all of our administration, that base would be the regular year salary would be 158,340.
158. Okay. So the 155 may be a little high for you then. I don't know if you want to start somebody that close to where you're losing a superintendent that's been there for a lot of years. But you still want to be competitive.
I would maybe start somewhere between maybe 135 to 140-ish as a low point. And I'd go up from there to maybe 165, maybe 170. But, you know, as you were saying, Steve, you know, we have a superintendent with a lot of years of experience here. And if we're doing the search and come across somebody that's got 3 years of experience as a superintendent, I wouldn't want to place that person in a position with a salary that's pretty close to what a seasoned superintendent has been getting.
Based on what I just learned about where your current superintendent is, I think if you picked a number of 140 and went 140 to 160, you're probably in the ballpark for a new person coming in. And the 160 would be an exceptional candidate.
I don't know what the assistant superintendents make in our district, but I would think that would be a consideration too, that a superintendent would come in definitely higher. And I don't know what percentage higher they would come in at. But I don't know what they'd make, as I said.
Well, could we do 140 to 165? Because if we've got a superintendent with a lot of years coming in, I mean, if we get someone with comparable, I mean, if we get someone that's a 20-year superintendent that's just decided they're tired of living in Chicago and want to live somewhere sunny, and they're fantastic. I mean, you don't have to give that, but it might, like, I agree with dropping the minimum. I'm just not, 160 just feels, not saying.
Why don't we do 163?
I like 5.
I'm good with the 140 to 160.
Okay, you want to do 160, Beth?
Steve, does that seem reasonable? I mean, does that sound like we would get a good amount of candidates interested?
I think so. Let me tell you when I say you have to be competitive, I think that makes you competitive. But I will tell you that there are districts out there that are really stretching to the stars. I had a district that I worked with last year, about 1,000 students. They went up to 170. Now that's out of the norm, and there's always somebody there. I don't think you need to compete, but understand that some districts do that. I want to, just so you know. But 140 to 160, looking at the numbers, I think is still competitive because, like I said, if you were 5,000 to 7,500 students, the mid-range is 150 right now. Well, 140 to 160 puts you actually in the mid-range of the next group higher. And you are technically in that group, but barely 5,000 to 7,500. So that's competitive.
Okay, so Janet's was 140 to 160. Scott, how do you feel about that range?
Yeah, I'm good with that, 140 to 160.
Beth?
Well, let me ask you one more question, Steve. Has it been your experience that if a candidate is interested in the location, really wants to move to Arizona, really likes this location, would they come back to you, but has a problem with this range? Would they come back to you and say, I really am interested, and they're super qualified? Do they ever come back and say, will you go back to the board and see if they'll give me, whatever? Or is that just strictly salary negotiation time?
Well, first off, once you set the range, you need to stick with it.
Okay.
The benefits are what are negotiable, because you're sticking with a range of 140 to 160. Then you've got the negotiable benefits. That's where you can play with it a little bit, because you could talk about a 401k, you can talk about performance pay, you can talk about, do they get a district vehicle to use, that sort of thing. That's your playground. But once you set the salary, you need to stick with it. Have I had somebody come back and do that? Yeah. And I had a board very interested in a person until I said, well, let me just go back and make sure that this person is solid with what what we've got here. And we took a recess and I went back to the call person. I said, look, they're interested. Are you still interested? And that person said, yes, but I won't do it for less than 165. And the board had, I think, set a high range of 145. Well, I knew right then that was it. I went back to the board and I said, yes, but, and the board said next, and we moved on. So I've had it happen once. It is not good practice for a candidate to do that. That is very poor practice.
Okay, Steve, do you have any idea of how many other openings there are in the state?
Right now?
Yeah.
It's limited right now. You're the only one I'm working with right now. Others, I've seen several over the last few days come in, but I haven't seen anybody else in Arizona at this point.
Okay.
One of the things to keep in mind, like with Dr. Burdick, part of her compensation also includes, we're paying for her medical, her we paid her retirement, but she's also got car allowances. And, you know, so when you add up all of the benefits, that 158,000 actually adds up to a lot more than 158. And as Steve was saying, that's part of the negotiation, because originally Dr. Burdick's car allowance was much different than it is now. And that was, it was changed several years ago to sort of add to the bottom line for her. So
Thing that if you do receive somebody that you're interested in from out of state, they're likely to ask you for some compensation for moving expenses. That's all negotiable also.
yeah, and see, those are all things that are gonna, that play into the cost of the employee, because the cost of an employee is more than just the salary, you know, what's in the paycheck. And yes, you know, as an employee, you're concerned with what's in that paycheck, but all of these other things are they impact the employee, and they're important to us for our bottom line that we need to be cognizant of.
Okay, Jim, what are your thoughts? I think right now we've got, if I'm right, just nod if I'm right. I've got Janet suggested and Scott has agreed. What is your thought on the 140 to, or did you also agree to the 140 to 160?
I already agreed to it.
Okay, Beth, what was your,
Yep,
okay,
Okay, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to change this to 140 to 160. Keep in mind, you haven't voted on it. It'll
right.
come back as the draft. You'll take care of it then. The other part of that page is just to be filled in under the search timeline. That's a discussion in a later agenda item. I just put those things down as placeholders, so ignore those for now. Once we get to the one of the last agenda items, then we'll talk about the timeline. And then actually we go back and I'll fill that in on this document and also on the search agreement. Other than that, the rest of it's just up to us to fill in the blanks, district website and such. So I think we've covered it now.
Okay.
And I already have my instruction.
Can we change that from Coconino County
yeah,
to Maricopa, please?
What was it?
for additional information.
The third bullet under additional information says Coconino County, and
Oh, my
it should be Maricopa.
Maricopa, yeah. That's where my editor has to help me. Maricopa, absolutely.
Now,
Now,
what,
do you at all, I know a couple of districts up in your area have, do you go into your Yavapai north of you at all?
No,
It's all in Maricopa, okay,
yes.
okay.
okay,
Okay, good. Now we're ready to move on, man.
okay. Thanks, Scott, for catching that.
Yep, thank you. Good job.
Now, can we back up a second? As far as, maybe I wasn't listening correctly. As far as timeline, are we?
We're gonna cover that in a later item, and
Okay,
then he'll backtrack and put it in.
okay, okay.
Because we got to approve those later, so that'll get filled in with the tweaking.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so item 3.4, district-specific questions for the application. So this is specific questions or specific to us that we would want to add to the questions the applicants are going to see. So this isn't from the advertising, this is from when they choose to apply with us. This is what they're going to see. So Mr. Hyland, would you like to?
That is correct. The 9 pages you see there that's the blanket application, and we stick exactly with that because of fair labor practices, make sure we ask all the right questions. The opportunity you have, if you'll go to page 9 of 9, there's an example there. And here's here's really where you need to make a decision, and you're not going to write the question tonight. We don't, you know, what you need to do is tell me what you want me to write and then I'll take care of it. But you need to look at your district in terms of what is maybe one of the biggest issues you've got right now. and then tell me what it is and let me formulate a question. And if you've got 2 or 3, that's fine. I'll give you an example. And if I've told you this before, I apologize, but it's the example that sticks out in my head. There was a district I worked with in southern part of Arizona, surrounded by 2 other districts. Did I mention this to you before?
I don't believe
What
so.
happened is this district was smaller than the others. Well, they didn't have the high school programs in particular that the smaller district did. So what happened? Open enrollment took 1/3 of their high school students away. So the question that they wanted to ask, they only had the one, and that is, as our new superintendent, what are you going to do to ensure that we keep our students here in our district and we get back as many as we can that have left under open enrollment? Now, that's not your question, but there's got to be a question or more that is really on your mind as a board that you really think ought to be asked on this application. So we can embed it in the application and we can ask them in 300 or 350 words or less, answer this question. And then it's important for you to read those very specifically because it's going to give you some tremendous insight of who these folks are. So I would ask you to open it up for discussion. Topic wise, what is the 1, 2, or 3 questions that you just burning to ask these folks when they apply?
Well, your first question that you have on this page 9 of 9, the second half of the first question, what do you feel you offer the district that separates you from other applicants? That's a pretty open-ended question. And it will draw out a lot of information because
Sure.
from how that person answers the question, you will be able to determine where this person's passion lies. And this question is designed to bring out a lot of different traits.
Would you like that more as a narrative question where it's more, would you like that to be the bigger question rather than just part of a smaller section up above?
It doesn't really matter. It's just, I think it's an important question.
Oh,
and
no,
wherever-
absolutely. I just didn't know if you wanted it somewhere different or just
It-
making.
I mean, as long as it's on the application, it's there. So it really doesn't.
And that stays where it's at.
Oh, that's part of the fair labor one?
That's,
You're talking about more about
no,
the
but
narrative
it's part of
question.
the whole big
Oh.
picture of our application. That one stays where it's at. So, yeah, and yes, that is correct. That does open a lot of doors to a lot of, response.
But with that first question, I would eliminate the first part. Why are you applying for this position? I would take that off and just use the second half, because if this person, how this person answers the question will lead to either why they're leaving their current position, or it will open the door for very good questions at an interview.
Was that part, well, I guess, yeah, with the questions to answer, not the narrative questions, but those above, is that part of the ones that we don't tweak because it's fair labor, or are those the ones we can?
Okay, what I'm going to tell you is this: the whole picture of the 9 pages addresses in part and parcel the fair labor laws.
Okay.
That
Now,
particular question is not specific to fair labor. It's just an open-ended question that we always have on our applications.
Now, are you wanting us to look at specifically at page 9 of 9, or?
I think it's the narrative part.
No, what I'm asking, and I think it's best, leave the questions as they are, the way they are. Give me additional questions
Yes.
that you want me to include. And that one under where it says narrative question, 250 words or less, is just an example. So the rest of it should stay just like it is. And then from that, and then when you look at what you want to add, tell me what you want to add, and then we'll embed it in the application as a narrative question or questions. So is there a topic, is enrollment a topic, is student achievement a topic, is budget and finance a topic? Where's your hot buttons on things that you just want to know right now about that person when they apply?
I'd like to ask them how they participated in their current school district's reaction to the pandemic, because that'll give us an idea of how they operate in a crisis management mode.
Wow.
How proactive and how efficient they are at organizing the individuals that work for them.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I think that also covers some finance, because this whole thing with the pandemic isn't just structure, it's, particularly in our district, finances are always an issue, and that has been a big part of that. So yeah, I think the reaction, how you handled and how you made it work in your district or where you were in your district. No, I think that's a good, yeah.
I can see that as a practitioner. I can see that being covering a lot of things. It's like, how are you handling the academics? How are you handling the teachers? How are you handling the cost? How are you abiding by the state laws and the federal laws that may or may not apply to this? I think you could wrap up, I think what you could do is actually say, have me write it so that there are all of those components that you're asking them to address, and just say you've got, 500 words.
Yeah, how did you handle it?
Of a lot with that one topic.
Yes, to
like
include those various components that you just mentioned. And, going forward from the pandemic, as I look ahead to the next year or two, my prediction in the education world is it's going to be rough. I think teachers are going to leave. They already have. I think more will leave. Districts may have a tough time finding teachers. So you've got that. With the state, funding from the state, because a lot of people are going to be going to them for money to cover the pandemic. That's just in the education world. The business world's going to be the same. They're going to be going to the state for money to recoup money as a result of this pandemic. So school funding to me is going to be even worse than it is now.
Well, do we want to put that in there though, like you're saying? Because I got to make sure we don't go too off topic, because we're just talking about the questions. But like what you're saying, where how did you handle it, and do you have a plan going forward, understanding that there are going to be finance and staffing ramifications from from the pandemic we've experienced? Because that would also cover the finance going forward, the staffing going forward, because it's going to affect us for years.
So can we only ask just one question? Because I actually have two that I would add to what Jim said.
We can ask more than one question.
I don't want more than three, because then you're getting into like college application, like.
Yeah, to write too many essay questions is asking a lot, but to kind of maybe wordsmith your question, because I liked your question, Beth, but to maybe ask it in a sense of, on the backside of this pandemic, how do you see education? What is this person seeing as the aftermath of the pandemic? Are they seeing it, we're back to business? Are they seeing it as, we're going to be now more digital learners, whatever it is? And how are they going to adapt the district to a new environment? They're stepping into uncharted territory. So how are you going to be able to adapt in these different areas of staffing and curriculum and finance?
Like how you're going to adapt to the challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, because it's an environment that nobody has any idea of what to expect. I mean, we can all speculate, and yes, there's going to be teachers leaving. We already have a teacher shortage, but is the classroom really going to be the way we've known it up to March of 2020? Or is the classroom going to become more of a distance learning hybrid kind of a thing? Nobody knows what really a year from now education is going to look like. And so, it's important for whoever we hire to be able to be somewhat of a visionary, to be able to look to the future and have ideas of some place to go and not be a reactionary person. And in the process, be grounded in bringing in issues that will pertain to financing from the state, staffing issues, because staffing is going to be a whole different bird, and curriculum and the delivery of it is going to be possibly very different than what we've all experienced to this point.
And
Well,
this
so-
person, no doubt, will be, no matter what capacity they're in right now, they'll be involved in that at the moment with wherever they are too.
Oh, of
But-
course. And, you
Well,
know,
But would that all go under James's thing? Like, we're just, you know,
In my
how
mind,
did you handle it, and how do you see the challenges and opportunities going forward? You know, what do you see as how you're going to have to adjust?
I see school financing as separate, because the school finance, I mean, it is clearly with the pandemic. We've always had a problem with school financing in the state for years because of our government. And so in my mind, that is a separate issue to include overrides and bonds if necessary. So I would like to know how comfortable an incoming superintendent would be in all those capacities, dealing with the state government with finances and in passing bonds and overrides. Because
mean,
that is existing constantly.
Isn't that more of an interview
Getting
question?
Far out from like that's, some of that stuff is more of like the interview questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe we just like the narrative is, if you look at like that example, I mean, that doesn't apply to us, but if you look at, it's more of a big picture type thing. Cause I'm wondering, like, I understand the bonds and overrides and that stuff's important, but I'm wondering if that's more of when we start getting into the finalists. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we're
You know,
hoping they know how to deal with it.
I do, and I get what you're saying. As long as we can include those kinds of things, and this, you know, where we had all the questions, yeah, I would totally go for that.
Because I think the narrative, I think what Jim has is like, it shows how creative are you, how have you handled unbelievable stress, you know, how have you handled, we kind of get an idea of that person. And then if we have it kind of that one broad topic, when we get to the interview stage, that's when we go into the nitty gritty and plot, well, what do you think is going to happen with finance? What do you think is going to happen? How do you see the classroom of the future after this? So maybe keep the narrative a really broad that hits with this. And then maybe then at the interview levels where we start getting into the real, because if we start into specifics, we could ask, you know, 40 questions.
Oh,
Yeah,
we
that's
we
fine
could
in a
have,
narrative. That's
how
fine.
many narrative questions do we have to have?
I'd like, I think the one, and maybe
I-
that kind of also gives us a hint at their personality.
Well,
You know, like,
you
it was
know,
a super bad struggle. We're like, oh, great. But
I think that Jim's question is very timely and very relevant. And, you know, when you're applying for a job, you know, you're looking at the application and it's the same sort of questions, you know, from employer to employer. To ask us, you know, questions that are rooted in our current environment, it makes it very relevant. And it conveys the message that we've taken the time and we've tweaked this to make it absolutely relevant to where we are in time. We haven't pulled an application off the shelf and said, here, go fill this out. And it speaks to a lot of the things that I think we all are very interested in having in a superintendent. And so I'm good having that one and then bringing in the other questions in other areas through this process.
how do you guys feel about that? Because I think it nails, it's a one, it is new. It's not like something you could have pulled out from, you know,
Off
6
the
months
shelf.
ago. So, and that opens us up to, when we get into the interview process, we can dig into more of how they adapted, and that gives us, so this gives an idea of the person. Are we good with like the one, you know, has that Jim presented, and just having the one, because it's a big one. How do you guys feel about that?
I will agree with all of you. But somewhere in this interview process, I really do want to dig into not what his vision is, but what are they prepared to do in terms of bond override, dealing with the state. How willing are they to be aggressive in those ways?
Well, I think that's something we do in like the interview.
And as long as
Mr.
we
Highland, would you agree that that's?
as long as that's one of our questions to ask directly, yeah, would go with one question in the narrative.
Scott, what do you think about Jim's?
I'm fine with that. I think that's a very timely question, and we will probably see lots of good replies, and we'll probably see some replies and say, "Oh, nuts! How come we didn't think of that?" And then I think for the interview process, the more specific questions that Member Hatcher's asking about, I think is where that comes into play. Because, we need to have enough questions for, I think Steve said, a 60 to 75-minute interview. So there'll be plenty of time to ask questions. And then you can always, I know we've got that handout that was sent to us with possible interview questions. So just make your notes on that document and then make sure we circle back around to catch all your concerns.
Okay. So,
I can take Jim's initial thought and the thoughts that you've all presented and establish a pretty good question out of that. One of the characteristics of asking, or one of the criterion of asking a question, is you don't answer it for them. So I open a door for them to address a lot of different things, and then we'll see if they do address those things. If they only address the here and now, they're not thinking to the future. So I'll write the question so it gives them an open door, but again, doesn't answer the question. And you'll see how thoughtful they are. If you have somebody that answers that question that Jim presented in 100 words, they're not thinking ahead. That's a dissertation.
Well, for
So
any of these non-fill in the blank kind of questions, the subjective questions, how they answer it, not, in addition to the content, but how they answer it speaks a lot to who this person is. And it's things that, it's subtle things that you can pick up on, which say a lot more than what someone could say in an interview sometimes.
Did I hear we were going to make that 500 words or less?
I think 500, considering what we're asking, I think we should up it to 500 to let them, because we're wanting some. I mean, that's a big. Well, so Steve, do we need to do the same thing where the motion needs to be similar to 3.3? If you want to wordsmith that motion, because it's gonna be something that you bring back to us at a future to just.
I will do that, and then we'll talk about the timings of it. So just on the next agenda item, so just same basic motion that you instruct ASBA to come back with a specific question related to response to the pandemic that we will embed in the application as presented. Somebody if wants to say so moved, that's enough.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, now going back to what page am I on? 9 of 9, further up on the above where it says questions to answer. Are these all questions that they're going to be on the application?
Yes,
They're sort of, they're etched in stone, so we don't modify those at all.
right. Everything up to that point is in stone. You've modified by your one question.
Okay, because that first question is really 2 questions and it's asking a lot, and it really should be broken up into 2 separate questions. So why are you applying for this? And then what separates you from other applicants? Those are 2 totally separate questions.
Mhm. It can be, yeah, I could write it either way if I was an applicant. Both aspects, though, I think are important. Why are you applying? Is it just because you could, or do you have a real reason? And why are you? And
Well,
so, what separates you? Why do we want to put time and effort into bringing you in for an interview?
I mean, if we need to leave them the way they're written, but that's not really a negotiable.
I would like to, but if the board nod, if you as a board nod your head and say Janet's right, then I'll change it.
But the content is going to remain the same though.
Well,
Right?
I'm just saying the question, it's the same two questions. It's just separated into two questions instead of run together as one.
You're gonna get just, multiple answers instead of just one answer.
And if you separate it into two questions, you open the door to get possibly some more information as opposed to, okay, I'm reading this question. Why am I applying for this job and what separates me? Okay, all right, let me just answer this as, what makes me such an amazing candidate for this? And the piece about why are you leaving? Well, maybe our district was going bankrupt or something, who knows? It could possibly leave out some other details that could add to the integrity of the application.
So you're just saying, just go like have first one, why are you applying for this position? Insert your response. Next question, what do you feel you offer this district that separates
Exactly.
you?
Exactly.
I'm fine with that. Do we have nods, thoughts on that? Where we're not eliminating, we're just making it two separate answers?
Yes. That's all I'm asking.
Jim, yes, Beth,
Yes.
thoughts?
I mean, that's
Go ahead
okay.
and do that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion that has been a first and a second that covers the specific question related to the pandemic that will be embedded, as well as changing that one question from one question to two. So that's the motion we have, and we have a first and a second. So Member Rich,
Aye.
I'm an aye. Member Hatcher,
I,
Busby,
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Okay,
Just for clarification, my understanding is that what you approved is that you've asked me to change that, which I'll do. I don't have to send that back to you, but I will send back that question for approval. And once I get that exact approval, the way I've written the question or you rewrite it, then I embed it and then we move forward, correct?
yeah, because the
Okay,
other one's just moving, yeah.
got it.
Okay. Item 3.5, addition of work study special meetings to the 2020-2021 governing board calendar. That's presented by me. I'm proposing, I'm actually going to add one more after the discussion we've had tonight, that we would have August 17th. We come back with those items that we need to see again, because we've sent them to be reworked, but we would do the final approval there. So we need to have a meeting then. And then October 3rd would be the screenings. That's going to be long. That's going to include lunch. We're going to be there a while, simply because we need to be there all day. And that's, I've looked at other districts, they generally do Saturday screenings. Week of October 12th would be the interviews. That'd be the first round of interviews. The week of October 26th would be final interviews. And we were going to discuss in that week of October 26th, adding a, oh gosh, what is the word for it? At the community event, the community forum, potentially Wednesday, October 28th, and then having interviews after that. So we've been able to disseminate from there. So right now we would have August 17th. So it's gonna be a minute, August 17th, October 3rd, week of the 12th for interviews, week of the 26th for final interviews, and the community forum and final interviews. So my motion, or I would suggest we approve the addition of the special meetings to the 2020-2021 governing board calendar as I presented with that addition of August 17th.
So
So
moved.
second.
Any discussion on that?
Yeah, Catherine, I can't, the 17th, August 17th poses a huge conflict for me. I'm already committed to something that I cannot get out of.
That Monday?
Yep.
Are you available Tuesday?
Hold on, let me check. Tuesday, yes.
Okay. can I then suggest, and member Rich, you can tell me, can I suggest then that it becomes the August 18th? Then
Okay.
October 3rd, the 12th and 26th? Would that be something you're okay with me adjusting that by a day on?
Yes.
Okay, and member Busby, you're still second on that with the tweak?
Yes, yes.
Okay, any discussion?
Now, back on one of these other items, we had a search timeline.
Right.
Is this where this is coming back into
Yeah, I
play?
think, Mr. Hanlon, do we need to go over the search timeline and add that into?
I will have that on the application. And you can look at that point. What I need to do is take those dates and work backwards to give myself time to prep and have everything ready for the board. So we will actually close the search about 10 days prior to October 12th. We'll close it around the 1st of October. I don't go with that specific date, but once I look at my calendar, I'll work backwards and I'll include those opening dates and closing dates to be consistent with your board meetings.
What about the vacancy announcement? Is that affected by the fact that we're having you come back on the 17th or the 18th, or is that just saying there is a vacancy and keep your eyes peeled? Is that what that
Well,
is?
what I will do is we will post either tomorrow or the next day that on our website that this position is going to be opening. Soon to open is the way we put it. And then we'll have all of our work prepped. If you give us the information back on the 18th, as long as you don't make huge substantial changes, that's a Tuesday, we'll have it posted by Thursday
Okay.
at 5 o'clock. So we would open it at Thursday at 5 o'clock. That'd be 1920. If you give us more than I would suspect you would, it could take us another day. And then we'll keep it open at least till around the October 1st. And I'll delineate that on the application that I send back to you so you see it.
So you would tweak the deadline for applications and screening dates as well?
Yeah, I'll have all of that in there.
Okay, and we
Okay.
see that on the 18th? Or is that, well, because we need to have that before so we're gonna see that on the 18th, and after we approve that, that's when we can post the job, correct?
Say that again.
So when you come back with these numbers on the 18th, we approve, those dates will be adjusted, and then that would be when we're able to, after we
Yeah,
approve that.
I'll have that all for you so you can see it on the 18th. Yes.
So for those dates, that's still something that's going to be adjusted later.
So should we table this until the 18th so that we know where we're going from there? Because right now, we've got to wait till the 18th for information to come back. And depending on,
we have to have the dates on there at least to.
well, and we won't have definite dates because based on what happens on August 18th will dictate going forward. If we have to modify or edit or make any kind of modifications, it can throw this timeline off. So until the 18th, we don't really have anything that we can say this is actually what it is, because that date is going to dictate how we go forward. At least that's what I've understood from Steve.
Somebody throwing it off by what, a day or two?
Let me clarify. The 18th will not affect the 12th or 26th unless you don't approve anything at all on the 18th. If you approve a few little questions or tweaks to the documents, that's easy. Katie can put that together and it'll be online. If you don't approve on the 18th, that could change the 12th and the 26th. I don't suggest that that'll occur, and keep in mind, these are fluid anyway, so we can always change it as we move forward. So I wouldn't be, good question, but I wouldn't be worried about it at this point.
Okay.
Now, some jobs are posted as open until filled. Is that not something that we can do with this?
You can.
Because,
But I
you
don't
know,
think we can talk about that, right? I mean, do we need to talk about that when he brings everything back? Because this is just dates. We're not talking about what's in
The problem that occurs with open until filled is what you have is you're interviewing at the same time you have the position open. And that leads to a lot of confusion because when are you going to decide then to interview? And then you still have people applying at the same time. It's kind of cumbersome, but I've seen districts want to do it that way. We don't guess that's right, but.
the thing that is concerning to me, this is kind of off season for doing a superintendent search.
Janet, we can't talk about that though. We can only talk about the dates. We've already approved the search. Right now, we can only talk about the
I
dates.
understand that. I am talking about the dates. But if you don't want me to say anything, I won't.
No, I'm
Well,
just saying,
but-
I don't see, we approved that. We've been given a timeline. This fits in the timeline. I don't know why we're trying to make it more open-ended than it needs to be.
Let me, I have a conflict with the week of October 12th.
The entire
So
week, like the whole week, or do you have a specific date?
I've gone out of state from the 15th to the 20th. And that trip is probably still going to happen.
Well, then we could at least keep it to the 12th through the 14th.
Okay, just to let you know,
Okay,
after,
yeah, so definitely 15th, you're out. So, I mean, we wouldn't do that then.
yeah, the
No, that's
15th.
absolutely 15th to 20th, and that's just good knowing going forward. So yeah, that's not an issue. So I'm gonna call
Okay.
the question. So we have a motion, it would be August 18th, October 3rd, the week of the 12th, knowing Scott's limitations starting the 15th, so that's definitely not gonna be an issue, and the week of the 26th. So we have a motion and a second to approve. Member Brown,
Shoot. Can I just make a statement
Well,
on
I've
that?
called- real quick, but I've called the question, so I'm gonna allow one statement, but then we're gonna vote.
On those weeks of the 12th and the 26th, we already have board meetings scheduled for those Mondays. So we're going to work interviews around our scheduled board meeting.
Yeah. We are. It'll work.
May I jump in here? Am I hearing right that you have a board meeting on the 12th?
No, I don't.
That's the second Monday.
Yes, it's on the website. The 12th and the 26th, we have already scheduled board meetings.
Well, then we could do it on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't
And then-
suggest you do a board meeting and interviews the same day.
Well, no, we wouldn't do it on the same day, but that gives us flexibility. The 12th, we have the 13th and 14th. We can make that work. And then the week of the 26th, we're just out on the Monday.
Scott, what days were you out of town?
15th to the 20th.
Well, can't we do it like the 22nd?
Pardon me?
Couldn't we change it to like the 22nd?
Why would we want to do that?
Because that's a week we don't have a board meeting?
Nope, we can't. There are, we are out, we've got something. Hold
A
on.
board meeting shouldn't affect it,
Yeah. So right now,
the meeting.
the week of the 22nd, that's a Thursday.
Make a Wednesday, the
Well, I know,
21st,
but I'm saying,
or the 19th. Well, no, Scott's gone. He's gone until the 20th, so the
Yeah.
21st.
A 2-hour board meeting shouldn't impact.
now, the motion we have is what we have. So I'm gonna call the vote. And vote as you wish. Member Brown,
Aye.
Member Busby,
Which dates are we voting on?
we are voting on the 18th, the 3rd, the 13th or the 14th, and then the week of October 26th, but not the 26th. So that's just the week of, that's not the day. Those are the dates we're voting on. So Member Brown is an aye. Member Busby,
Aye.
Hatcher,
Aye.
I'm an aye. Rich.
Aye.
Okay, we have no old business. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No. You've got to go back to item 2.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
Thank
Sorry.
you for being
Item
so
2.1,
abrupt.
sorry. Next superintendent search meeting overview, and that is presented by Mr. Highland.
And I apologize for being so abrupt, but if you motion to
Oh,
leave,
no, you're right.
we couldn't have done this. We have now 3 items or so that we need to address. We're going to, on the 18th, okay, you're going to have an agenda item that will address the approval of the question to be on the application and the approval of the draft position document. Then on the 3rd of October, we have that's a Saturday, by the way, if you didn't recognize, we have a very lengthy agenda. We will talk about initially information related to how to do the screening. That won't take us too long, 15 minutes maybe. But then you will motion to go into executive session. If you choose to go into executive session, then you'll have an executive session, whereupon I will have files of all the people that applied. And we'll have to have you go through all of those. Now, I am really hoping that we can do that one in person because it becomes very cumbersome if we don't. But we'll have to see where we're at statewide and what guidance we have and how comfortable you are. We'll have to find a way to do that, whether it's remote or hopefully together. So you screen applicants. Depending on how many applicants you screen, that process alone could take 4 or 5 hours. If you've got 10 applicants, it won't take that long. If you've got 30, it'll take longer. And then you come out of executive session and you discuss who you're going to bring back or who you're going to invite for a interview. And you're going to then at that point instruct me to invite candidates 1, 2, 6, 8, and 15 or whatever. With that, then we need to, once that's finalized, then we need to talk about the interview process. There's a number of ways to do an interview. It's not just a matter of necessarily asking a question, getting an answer, and saying thank you. There's other ways to do that. Once we have talked about that, then we have to talk about the questions. Now, this is always an interesting issue because state law does not allow you to define questions related to an interview in executive session. And if you define the question exactly in the open session, then you've already given it away, and somebody who has got maybe a local person, industry person, they already know the questions. So I will present a couple of different ways to do that we don't have that occur. And then we'll discuss also at that time the community forum, and by then we'll have an idea whether we can do it in person or whether we're going to have to do it remotely. We'll discuss that. And then I will, like I'm doing tonight, I'll explain what the next agenda item will be during the interviews. And also as part of that piece on, I should have said this earlier, on part of that piece about the process of the community forum, at that point, district staff, and I'm not sure who that would be, is going to have to talk to you about what they can do to get the word out for the forum and give you a little idea of what they think, how they can spread the word. And then you need to give them input about specific things you want done at the community forum to get as many people there as possible. So that is kind of a very quick version of a 6 to 8 hour meeting next time we get together, or when we get together for the screening.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that screening meeting?
Which day is that?
That's October 3rd.
I just have a general question. What is the rush to get all of this done in October? What
That's
if it gets pushed out till November? I mean, if our timeline would be pushed out to November, what is the problem with that?
Well, all the dates are flexible.
Well, that's not quite the message that I've been getting, and I'm,
But that's why it's all like the week of, it's just, there's a flexibility built in, is my understanding.
well, that's kind of not the message that I've been getting. It's like, it's got to get done in October. It's got to get done now. And
This is
That's-
just the discussion of the overview. It's not the timing. We've already approved it. The only thing we're talking about now is what is going to go on in the meeting on October 3rd. That is the only agenda item that we can discuss. That's what is up for discussion, not the timing. All we can discuss is what's going to be on the next meeting agenda on October 3rd. So do we have any questions about that?
How large of a facility, or, I mean, it's just going to be the governing board and immediate staff, right? So we can do this in the governing board room if we're allowed to?
Are you talking about the screening meeting?
Yes, the October 3rd meeting.
Generally, the screening meeting is just the board and me.
Yeah, I think the only thing we would have to temporarily turn it on because we're briefly in public session. We'd have to have that videoed briefly. But then once we go into executive session, keeping in mind what we've got going on, we would need to turn that off so we could stay in the bigger room. Generally, our executive sessions are in a small room, but that's probably not going to be advisable.
You
But
will,
so we would need to have, because we're in a public meeting briefly at the beginning, correct?
you are, and then after executive session, you go into a public meeting, which means you will have to have somebody taking minutes for the public meeting, but as long as your administrative assistant is there for the public part, and then I don't know how you do your minutes for your executive session, whether a board member does that.
I do that. The vice president does that.
Vice
Yeah,
President
no, we
does it.
could
So
stay in the, are you saying if we could stay in the governing board for that?
so you're covered then.
Well, if it's a public meeting, wouldn't that be possibly open to the public?
No, we would have to, they could be in for the beginning and then they would need to leave because we need to stay, at this point in time, we would need to stay spread apart. They would have to leave for the part when we're in the executive session and then they could come back later. But
Okay,
they would not be able to be in the building if we're staying in the big part of and that's the logistical thing, but they would not be able to be in there while we're in executive session, no.
right, okay.
They could come back.
And you
Right,
might
that's
want
just
to
what we
think
have.
about where you're going to do this so you have the best accessibility to space to keep people spread out. So that's a local decision, what best facility you want to do this in.
Well, we have plenty of room in our governing board meeting room. It's just a matter of if we're able to use it.
Okay,
We should be able to socially distance there.
okay. Do we have any other questions about the agenda? Okay, so now do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Member Brown,
Aye.
Busby,
and I would like to say, Steve, thank you for your time and your efforts. Catherine, thank you for your leadership.
we're getting there.
Hey, it's all good. We're collectively, we work together, we'll get there.
Okay,
You
so.
you did a good
Busby-
job tonight.
Wait, we haven't escaped
Nice.
yet. Hatcher,
aye.
I'm an I, Rich.
Aye.
Okay, all right, and we did not go the full 5 hours, or 4 hours, so congratulations, guys. All right,
Congratulations.
so make sure you click out and turn off.